It was sweet to watch two lovebirds perched on a tree enjoying the warm summer sun. Miss Chang had been endlessly searching for true love for her daughter, spending money on marriage agencies, yet every date she went on ended in failure. Su Bin grew frustrated with the expenses for each date and urged her mother to think practically. The girl felt deeply hurt, regretting the wasted money, but her mother was determined not to repeat the same argument again. The girl's anger escalated, insisting the matchmaking attempts stop. The girl said that it would indeed be the last time. Shoved toward the door in her mother's fury, she tripped slightly on the threshold, barely catching herself from falling. As she walked down the street, she muttered her frustration over her mother's relentless behavior and the tteokbokki stall in that godforsaken place. She continued walking, weighed down by sadness and anger. Despite repeatedly telling her mother she wasn't interested in marriage, her feelings were ignored. At first, she barely noticed her surroundings, but gradually, she saw blooming gardens and bright sunshine. The lovely weather lifted her spirits as she strolled, appreciating the scenery around her. Arriving at the restaurant for her date, she met a friendly-looking man, introduced as the eldest son of the Mangacapped family. They started chatting. She smiled as he described living with his parents and his desire for a future wife who would handle housework rather than pursue a career. He explained that his parents had worked hard their whole lives, and as the eldest son, he hadn't been able to help them much. He expressed his wish to ensure his parents' comfort in retirement, and she listened politely, acknowledging his perspective. He inquired about her father's health, and she quietly admitted he hadn't been doing well. Su Bin revealed that her father had been in a serious car accident 3 years ago, and the man seemed to take her words to heart. He asked if she was the only one supporting her family, which caught her off guard, leaving her silent as she sipped her drink. Setting her glass down, she listened as he asked about the size of her restaurant. She explained that it wasn't big at all, just a tiny snack shop selling tteokbokki near a school in a building she rented. She added that she had to pay rent and only earned from sales. He expressed that he understood. He asked if she really planned to continue living with her parents, noting that it was a little confusing. Then he smiled and explained that it didn't mean he didn't like her. In fact, she was his type, and he thought he had fallen for her at first sight. She froze, unsure how to respond. Su Bin explained that, as an only child, she had no siblings, so she needed to live with her parents, and she also wanted to continue working and earn a promotion. She didn't like his words and rose slightly from her seat, expressing fear that they weren't meant to be, and wishing he would find someone nice. She laughed awkwardly and tried to leave, but he stopped her, clearly showing that he really liked her. The man pleaded with her not to dismiss it so quickly and urged her to think it over, noting that a woman becomes part of her husband's family when she marries. He insisted that she couldn't take care of her parents forever. He added that she already faced enough problems and questioned whether parents with only one daughter weren't prepared for retirement. She interrupted, showing that she didn't like the idea. He offered to move closer to her parents' place if she wanted, but she shook her head. He tried to continue, but she politely apologized, saying she had done her best to be respectful. The conversation bothered her, and looking him in the eye, she coldly asked whether he always followed double standards. He tried to defend himself, saying that if she valued her parents, she needed to realize that he valued his as well. Pointing her finger at him, she shouted that he was only a good son in words. Furious, the girl screamed that he should treat his parents better, calling him a brat. Without waiting for her response, he ran off. She shouted that he could never stop caring for her parents and angrily tossed ice cubes into her mouth, crunching them in frustration. Then she tried to calm herself, thinking that it would be fine and that she shouldn't let men get to her like this. Running her hands through her hair, she realized that her personality was strong and not easy to deal with. She stepped outside and saw it was raining. Opening her umbrella, she wondered what was going on with the sudden weather. She walked a long way under the pouring rain, lost in thought about what to say to her mother. The downpour was so heavy that she barely noticed other people nearby. A woman stood over her child with a jacket to shield them from the rain, likely heading toward a nearby supermarket. Seeing the woman, Su Bin remarked on how hard it was raining. The woman agreed, noting how suddenly the weather had changed. Su Bin watched the little child hiding under the jacket. She insisted that the woman take her umbrella to avoid getting soaked, despite the woman's polite refusal. The woman thanked the girl and carried her child through the heavy rain while the girl waved after them. The rain was relentless. She covered her head with her hand and ran down the street, trying to reach home quickly. In her hurry, Su Bin didn't notice a man standing in the rain with an umbrella. Bumping into him startled her, but he noted that she hadn't changed a bit. She couldn't see his face clearly and panicked, swinging her fists as if he were a thief or a goblin. The man stood there, surprised at how scared she looked, and introduced himself as Ji Ye-jun. Noting that it had been a long time since they last met, he added that they still had unfinished business. She reacted angrily, scolding him for appearing like a ghost and scaring her. He shot back that she was still as nasty as ever. The girl yelled at him furiously, insisting that no one had claimed she had a nasty personality, telling him to look at himself. She accused him of not coming there just to see her face, and he admitted that she was correct. She stood silently in the rain, staring at him and completely lost for words. He reminded her of the money she had borrowed 10 years ago and explained that he was there to collect it. After pausing to observe her standing drenched, he suddenly proposed marriage. She was shocked. His proposal hit her like a bolt of lightning, leaving her frozen as raindrops streamed down her face. The girl stood looking at the man, who was waiting for her response. She was so surprised that she asked him what he had just said. Yejun asked if her parents were doing well. She confirmed that they were fine and thanked him. He then asked about her shop and she told him it was fine as well. He mentioned that he wanted to talk to her alone and suggested going somewhere to sit. The girl said she didn't want to talk alone and asked if it was really urgent, suggesting they could discuss it another time. She explained that it wasn't about avoiding the conversation about the debt, but that she wasn't feeling well at the moment. He, however, silently walked away. She tried to stop him, but he ignored her. So she chased after him and told him she would go with him. Subin caught up with him and asked how he could leave someone soaking in the rain when he had an umbrella. She tried to talk to him, but he gestured for her to come closer so they could share the umbrella and stay out of the rain together. Her mood improved and she smiled, teasing him that he was still such a stick in the mud. He looked at her strangely and then joked that her face was still kind of ugly. He stayed quiet and didn't react to her anger, even when she said he annoyed her, but they continued walking together. A few days earlier, he had met with his father, who told him that this was his last chance. That was why he proposed marriage to the girl. His father had given him a month to get married, warning that if he didn't, he would marry the woman his father chose. He told his father he had never intended to marry. His father became very angry, pounding the table and yelling that he was ungrateful for everything his father had done. His father said that if he didn't marry, he shouldn't even dream of inheriting the company. The man felt upset hearing this, but his father added that in a month he would take away everything he lived for and loved. Yejun asked if it was because he wasn't his biological son. His father replied that he could never repay all the kindness he had been given. His father also mentioned that his grandmother had no more than 6 months left to live and told him to think carefully about what he had been offered. When he entered the restaurant with the girl, he couldn't stop thinking about his father's words and the urgency to get married as soon as possible. The girl asked what was going on and what he wanted to talk about. He suggested they get married, but she was very stubborn. She panicked and shouted that it would never happen, repeating this for the last time. Despite her hysterics, the man calmly repeated that they should get married, while she insisted she didn't want to marry. Subin accused him of joking, but he insisted he was serious. She yelled that he had gone crazy, yet he remained completely serious about the proposal. She said it didn't sound right and that marriage wasn't a joke. But he suggested marrying for just 1 year and that he would forget about her debt. Subin calmed down a bit and listened carefully, and he proposed that they pretend it never happened afterward. He reminded her that she didn't have a stable income, and since she said marriage wasn't a joke, he tried to convince her. The girl accused him of thinking he could play with people's feelings just because he was rich. He told her not to react so emotionally. He pointed out that, in any case, she wasn't really interested in getting married. She was surprised and asked him to clarify. Putting his coffee cup on the table, the man asked why she was sabotaging all the blind dates if she really didn't want to marry. He asked if her parents knew she didn't want to marry, still trying to persuade her. She asked if he had tried to find information about her, thinking his behavior was unacceptable. Yejun said she shouldn't have expected him to come unprepared, explaining that he wasn't the type of person to act without preparation and assumed she knew him better than others. The girl thought he was right since she had known him since childhood and knew his unbearable personality well. She even described him as a sly guy, like a snake who always got what he wanted. That was Ji Yejun. Her head started hurting badly and she said he hadn't come to her before and that she would somehow repay the debt. He asked her how she planned to do that. Subin pursed her lips and stared at him. He reminded her that he had given her 10 years without interest and still asked how she would pay him back. He told her the contract would expire next month, and no matter what situation she was in, he wanted everything returned on time. The girl picked up her bag to leave, but he told her to think carefully about it. He added that after 1 year, he would pay her well so she could live with her parents comfortably. Subin looked at him in disbelief, laughed, and told him he couldn't bribe her with such nonsense, sending him away. She thought he was such a fool as she stormed out of the restaurant, leaving him alone with his coffee. At the exit, she smiled and asked Yejun if he even understood what he was saying, noticing his umbrella by the door. She grabbed his umbrella, ran outside, hoping he would get wet and sick, and finally returned home late at night. Her mother was happy to see her back and asked what happened on the date and if she had been with him the whole time. The daughter didn't want to tell much and said she was a bit tired and would go to sleep first. She quickly ran to her room, telling her mother she needed some sleep as well. Once in her room, the girl quickly lay on her bed, hugging her pillow, saying she was very tired, but she couldn't fall asleep for a long time, remembering the man's words about giving her the money 10 years ago and her promise to repay it. She thought about how the money she borrowed from Ji Ye-jun, 100 million won, had helped them in many ways. Soo-bin had opened a small snack shop for her mother and used some money for her father's treatment. She could have repaid the debt with a loan if needed. But the problem was that Ye-jun wanted the debt repaid not with money, but through marriage. She realized she had made a big mistake, turned to the other side, and tried to sleep since she had work the next day. That's how she first met Ye-jun. They had been in elementary school together for 6 years, and at their first meeting, someone had pressed the wrong button. The girl had done it with good intentions because she was a kind and sweet girl, full of hope. He told her she wasn't very confident, which was why their relationship never worked out from the beginning. It all started when a new boy transferred to their school. He was incredibly popular with all the girls and seemed almost otherworldly, just stunningly handsome. The boy really was striking, with a handsome face, dark hair, and a neat hairstyle. His eyes showed warmth and friendliness. He was calmly sitting in class reading a book when a very strange girl approached him. She put a small box on his desk and asked if he wanted to drink it. She suggested he probably hadn't eaten yet and asked if he was hungry. The boy looked at her strangely and asked what kind of weirdo had come over. The girl became very angry at him for insulting her. He called her a brat and told her to drink it herself. The girl shot back that he wasn't exactly a handsome guy either and could skip drinking it if he didn't want to. The girl explained that Ji Ye-jun had transferred to their school in 6th grade, and he was very popular because of his looks. She was immediately drawn to this handsome boy and decided to take care of him by offering lunch. When the teacher entered the classroom, they reminded the students that tomorrow was the last day to pay for school lunches. All the students agreed. Walking home from school, the girl thought Ji Ye-jun might not have paid for lunch either. She reasoned that it was because he was so attractive, her gaze couldn't help following him no matter what he did. As she walked down the street, she overheard a strange conversation about lunch money. Someone was saying it was a good way to help people who might freeze outside one day. She got a few steps closer and heard someone complaining about how he dared to ask them for money. When she entered the building and walked down the hallway, she heard someone yelling again about how bold he was. A few steps further, she was shocked by what she saw. Soo-bin saw the boy lying on the floor, calling for help, while a stranger tried to punch him. The next day was a beautiful morning. The girl woke up ready to go to school. When she arrived, she heard the bell ring. As she opened the classroom door, she thought maybe he hadn't paid for lunch because he couldn't, not because he didn't want to. She held an envelope with money, ready to give it to him, even if it meant sacrificing her own lunch money. She tried to place the envelope on his desk and wondered how she would explain it to her mother, knowing Ye-jun would probably tell her to mind her own business. She attempted to slip the money into the book on the shelf under his desk, but got startled by a noise behind the door. She quickly put the envelope away and ran off. When everyone entered the classroom and class started, a boy came in, visibly upset, and told the teacher that his lunch money had disappeared. The students began whispering. They wondered if Ye-jun hadn't paid last time. Some didn't know he was very poor. His mother had abandoned him, and he lived with his grandfather. Someone noticed blood on him and saw him heading into a semi-basement. His grandfather was always drunk and often argued. When the teacher searched for the money, it was found in Ye-jun's desk drawer. The teacher asked if he really did this and told him to come to the teacher's office. Later, the girl told the teacher that the money found in his drawer was hers and that it was all a misunderstanding. The teacher suspected she was just protecting the boy because she felt sorry for him. In the end, the missing lunch money was found in one of the books, and all misunderstandings were cleared up. Walking down the hallway, the girl caught up with Ye-jun, grabbed his hoodie, and started apologizing. She explained that she had acted with good intentions. He was furious. He mocked her good intentions and pushed her away, hitting her hand. He yelled, saying she thought her apology could fix everything and accused her of being overly confident. The girl felt guilty and anxious, then asked what she could do to make things better for him. He shouted that he didn't need anything and told her not to worry. Then he added that someday he would get revenge and walked away. He explained that he wanted her to feel the same sense of helplessness he had felt, insisting that he also had good intentions in doing so. He told her that this way she would understand what it felt like to be rejected by everyone and see if she could survive it. As time went on, they drifted apart, eventually finishing elementary school, and their paths were not meant to cross again. As hard as it was to believe, the girl reflected that their lives had completely changed. Nothing was the same as before. Unexpectedly, her father's business went bankrupt, and they had to move to a new apartment. While climbing the stairs, she noticed their new apartment and realized Ye-jun had lived in the top floor unit of the same building. Helping her parents carry her things, she remembered hearing that Ye-jun's mother had remarried a wealthy man and moved away. Soo-bin decided that even if they met at school, they would pretend not to know each other. Yet the atmosphere around him hadn't changed, and it scared her. One day at school, she saw two boys fighting fiercely in the hallway. She was terrified and started screaming. She noticed Yejun lying on the floor, furious at the other boy with a split lip. Despite the pain, he kept fighting. The fight went on for a long time. The boys ignored the scared girl, who kept screaming until she finally called the teacher, explaining there was a fight. The teacher took the boys to the office. When Yejun came out, he saw the girl waiting outside, anxious and surprised. She asked him if he had done it on purpose, but he remained silent, irritated that she kept following him. He reminded her that they were supposed to pretend not to know each other, and told her not to speak to him again, telling her to go away. She tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. Subin mentioned that the other boy had said he would take the school president position, which had angered Yejun, and that she had seen them before the fight. She remembered watching the boys talk for a long time. Then Yejun whispered something in the other boy's ear, and the fight started. Subin asked if he had predicted that he would make that boy hit him first. He smiled at her and said, "Well, what's so unusual about that?" She asked what he meant. The boy replied that there was no problem at all. Losing can also be winning. Forgiveness is kindness, and she had expected something along those lines from him. So it wasn't funny at all. The girl stood silently, listening to him. He added that it sounded like something they tell children, but he intended to stay the same until he died. The boy was about to leave, but she grabbed his hand tightly, shouting for him to wait and listen carefully. She told him that revenge only leads to more revenge, asking if he understood. He asked why she wouldn't leave him alone. She insisted that he shouldn't do that. Surprised, he asked why. Then, touching her shoulder, he asked if she wanted to help others while being afraid herself. He leaned closer and whispered that she was afraid because she thought she would become their next target. The girl was stunned and didn't know how to respond. She turned and walked away, thinking that if he had done anything more than he already had, he would have surely been expelled or suspended. The boy went in the opposite direction, but she couldn't stop thinking about his position in the student council and the privileges that came with it. With the obstacle gone, people would now try to take advantage of the situation and confront each other equally, she thought. He was a candidate for student council president, she reflected, but Yejun had always been ignored, which probably caused him pain. Yet he had changed so much and now had everything he needed. Subin had been in middle school for 3 years. Coming home, she asked her father what she should do. She cried, feeling confused, but her father reassured her that everything would be fine. It had been a street stall where her parents had earned a living until local delinquents destroyed it one day. Her father fell ill and needed 6 months of treatment, but they had no money at the time, which upset and scared her greatly. Those memories made her feel humiliated, yet ironically, Ji Yejun was the only one who had extended a helping hand. One day, someone knocked on the door, and when she opened it, she saw the guy greeting her. He asked if this was Subin's house. The girl looked at him, frightened, unable to understand who he was or why he had come. The tall, slender, handsome guy with a smile introduced himself as her friend. His name was Ji Yejun. Her mother clasped his hands, saying she didn't know how to repay him for his kindness. The guy smiled and said he was glad to help. He explained that when he had problems, Subin had helped him by paying for his school lunch. The amount borrowed was 100 million won, with a repayment period of 10 years. Ji Yejun lent them the money, and the girl would start paying it back once she was financially stable. It sounded like a very advantageous deal, and the guy said to consider it as repayment of the debt, looking at the girl and laughing. The girl, desperate for money at the time, naively accepted the offer. She didn't understand why the guy had decided to help them. Her mother was very worried and asked if he had really given such a large sum. Yejun replied that the amount didn't matter. "I do this from the heart," he said, silently looking at the girl, whose expression reflected both joy and surprise. A woman stood beside him. She introduced herself as his grandmother's secretary who would help with the contract. The guy explained that all documents had been prepared in advance, handed them to the girl, and told her to review them. The girl's face turned pale and displeased as she was surprised that he had prepared the contract beforehand. Noticing her gloom, the guy asked what was wrong with her face, but she was too worried to answer. He gently touched her face and told her not to worry because he wasn't just giving her money. As he was about to leave, he turned back and said he would find her even if she were on the other side of the world. Placing his hand on her shoulder, he asked if she understood he was serious. The girl wondered if Yejun had felt as miserable when he was accused of stealing lunch money, but she realized his revenge was on a completely different scale. The next day, she went to work at the office as a deputy director and performed her duties very professionally. Colleagues asked if a month had passed since her promotion and if she would treat them today. She thought it would be awkward to forget about it and agreed, realizing it was proper etiquette. "Yes, I will treat you all," she said, and her colleagues cheered that the deputy director was the best. After work, they went to a restaurant, enjoying a wonderful evening and ordering expensive dishes. After dinner, everyone left satisfied, thanking her for the meal. Subin was pleased that everyone had enjoyed it. However, when she checked her phone, she saw her credit card balance was almost empty this month, and she felt disappointed. Standing at the bus stop, she thought that she was the only one in her family earning money, so she couldn't treat it as her personal wealth. On the bus, she reflected that even working like an ant, money still slipped through her fingers. Making money was not fun at all. She muttered to herself that she was fed up, realizing she needed to repay the credit step by step instead of burdening Ji Ye-jun. Thinking about how Ji Ye-jun had helped her repay illegal partial loans, she knew she couldn't refuse him even if he asked for money now. She recalled his words, just 1 year, and then he would even pay extra for her. She thought carefully about it. On the bus home, her mind was full of worries. She didn't even want to think about marriage. She had almost gathered 100 million won, but still had to pay her father's medical bills. Yet she couldn't forget the man's words about paying enough for her to live comfortably and even open a store for her mother. Staying by her parents' side for life had always been her wish. She closed her eyes and thought everything through again. She had to spend 1 year with him, and after that, she would be free forever. Subin tried to shake off her thoughts, shouting for them to leave her alone, attempting not to think about him anymore. Then she received a message on her phone. She saw that Sun Young's wedding was scheduled for that week and wondered how much money she should give as a gift. Taking a deep breath, she put her phone in her bag and thought she might pretend to be crazy. But then she forced herself to pull herself together. It was a beautiful sunny day, and it was time for Sun Young's wedding. The girl happily went to the venue to congratulate her. She approached the bride, complimented her on looking beautiful, and suggested taking a photo as a keepsake. Then the girl stepped aside to chat a little with her friends. When asked if the bride had mentioned that her husband worked at a large company, but another said she didn't know and honestly couldn't believe it. Who would have guessed she'd announce her wedding just a month after breaking up with her boyfriend? She had been dating her ex for a long time, and everyone expected she'd marry him. Yet this marriage didn't seem Sun Young had acted wisely. "So, Subin?" her friends asked, but she didn't know what to say and just smiled. The conversation was very interesting to her. The girls continued walking. "If this marriage is for love," one said, "they won't separate, which means she chose the right path." Another added that she was so jealous of the bride because her husband probably gave her lots of gifts. One girl then said she also wanted to get married, even if it only lasted a year before they separated. And there was nothing wrong with that. "Everyone should try it at least once so they don't regret it later, right?" a friend asked. Subin thought that she had also believed a wedding should be based on love, not just a formality. Sitting there, she thought her friends really did see marriage from different perspectives. "Look at Sun Young's mom," the girl said. "She must be so happy to have such a son-in-law." "I also dreamed of being a good wife and mother, more than anyone else," the girl said. "But now it seems like a story that will never happen in my life." Of course, it meant nothing to her, she thought. "Oh dear, you're dreaming of this. It means you've thought it all through." It felt as if someone whispered these words in her ear. The girl remembered the man and waved her hands as if to push her thoughts away. "Why does he occupy my mind every time I try to think of something else?" she wondered. Then the girls looked around and saw a man sitting nearby. "He's so handsome," one said, and the other agreed, asking if he might be a celebrity. Subin blinked, her thoughts drifting far away. The girls wanted to sit next to the handsome man during the banquet, but then wondered if he might be married. The girl was so lost in thoughts about Ji Ye-jun that she didn't notice the man sitting nearby. "Oh, he's looking this way," the girls shouted, as the man indeed kept glancing at them. "He's such a cutie," they exclaimed, smiling. Subin, noticing Ji Ye-jun, shouted so loudly it seemed even the birds flew from the trees. "What the heck? Why is he here again?" She looked at him, startled, wondering why he was so handsome. Ji Ye-jun was a guest on the groom's side. Why do I have to see his face again, she thought. Gathering her friends, she suggested they leave. After the wedding ceremony, the girls went together to the banquet table to choose comfortable seats. Then the girl, carrying a plate, went to pick her food, but suddenly heard a voice behind her saying she had the same taste. The man had approached so unexpectedly that she was startled. Turning around, she saw Ji Ye-jun and asked why he had appeared and what he was planning. The man calmly chose his food and explained that the groom was the son of their company manager. The girl looked at him, surprised, but he calmly picked fish for his plate and said, of course, he had been invited to the wedding. Does this make any sense? Do you think I'm a fool? If you wanted to apologize, you could have done it better, the girl said. He replied that he didn't seem like a joker and had never tricked her. Subin glared at him angrily, not expecting to see him at the wedding, thinking he was following her. The man was surprised by her reaction, but then she told him to just be honest and asked if he had been following her. "Why would I follow you?" "Maybe it's you," he said. The girl, furious, snapped, "As if! Are you out of your mind?" He thought she was angry because it was very noisy in the hall, which irritated her. The girl carelessly put more food on her plate and, still upset, ran back to her table. The man stood smiling, watching her leave, unable to understand why she had reacted that way. Guests sat at the long table, laughing, chatting, and praising the delicious food. Everyone was having a great time. Carrying her plate to the table, the girl noticed seats meant for elderly people and was very surprised. She asked if the elderly people sitting across had already eaten. A girl replied that yes, they had, and asked if she hadn't noticed them leaving. Then some people at the table called the CEO and suggested he sit next to the girl. The man approached the table. Seeing Ji-Jun sit down, Soo-bin shouted, "He's here again!" She was shocked that he even sat next to her. Her friends were surprised by her reaction. The man explained he had just taken the empty seat he saw. A friend sitting near Soo-bin asked if she knew him. She pretended not to understand, then looked at the man and asked, "Are you talking about him?" They sat next to each other, pretending not to know one another. Someone at the table asked the CEO if he knew the girl sitting next to him, and he just nodded. "Yes," the man said. "We studied together in elementary, middle, and high school." Their friends were amazed. "Oh, that's wonderful." "Nice to meet you, and great to see Soo-bin's classmate here," the girl said. "She never mentioned having such an attractive classmate," a friend said, nudging Soo-bin and joking about arranging a blind date, laughing. While the man continued talking with the men at the table, the friend asked what he did for work since he was called the CEO. "We work at a travel agency called K-Tour," he replied. "It's the best travel agency in the city." The man handed the girls a business card. Looking at it, they were surprised, asking if it was K-Tour from K-Group. The girls imagined themselves on a trip, already picturing themselves on a plane. It was the best travel agency. "And the person in front of you is our CEO, guests said. The girls sat, stunned, speechless. While everyone chatted cheerfully, a man quietly approached the table. He addressed the girls, who initially didn't notice him. Placing his hands on their shoulders, he exclaimed, "Who do I see, and what beautiful ladies are at this wonderful table?" Looking around, he spotted Soo-bin and remarked that she was here too, becoming more beautiful with each passing day. He approached the girls, looked at them, and suggested they sit together so they wouldn't appear like zombies. The girls agreed. He asked them what was wrong with their faces. Soo-bin wondered why this man was here. The girls thought they didn't even know him. But the man continued, saying it had been so long since their last meeting, and asked how she had been. Taking a glass in her hand, the girl thought of Jin-sung. His name was Choi Jin-sung, and in college everyone called him an explosive bomb because he became unbearable when he drank. She wondered if she should be happy to see him. The man remarked that it had been a while since he had seen her. Smiling at her, he noted that their Soo-bin still walked around with a sour expression, just like she had in college. The girl pretended not to care and asked when she had supposedly become his Soo-bin. Ji-Jun smiled and told the man that she had remained just as fiery as ever. Jin-sung sat closer to the girl, smiled, adjusted his hair, and mentioned that he had become quite popular lately. "Haven't you heard the rumors that I work at a trading company and they pay me more than expected?" said the red-haired boy. "Rumors spread so fast these days." The girl tried to focus on eating, ignoring him, thinking that it wasn't unusual. Time passed and he still liked to show off. She thought she'd had enough of his games, remembering their college days. He hadn't changed at all. Noticing she was ignoring him, the man laughed and asked why she was doing so. She thought that, in truth, she couldn't stand him, especially being a third-generation chaebol. He addressed her again, saying he was talking to her. She replied that she heard him and tried to recall what he had said about his business dealings. Then she looked at him and accused him of selling fake goods, claiming that his watch was one of them. The man turned red, his face showing anger and his body trembled. The conversation with her was unpleasant for him. A few minutes later, he lifted his head, looked at her seriously, smiled, and admitted that she had asked correctly about the watch. Choi Jin-sang, trembling, held a glass and asked what had happened with the guy from medical college, recalling that she had said they were planning to get married. Ji-Jun listened carefully to what the man said. Jin-sang mentioned that rumors had spread that the guy had left her because he had an affair with the granddaughter of a CEO from a large company. Soo-bin was furious that he had said such things about her in front of everyone, gritting her teeth to stop herself from hitting him. She slammed her fist on the table, feeling embarrassed, but Jin-sang smiled and asked if what he said was true or not. The man reminded her that she had said she was going to marry the medical college guy, and he wasn't the only one who remembered. Jinsong laughed loudly, slapping the table, calling her overconfident Shinsubin. Ji Yejin sat quietly, listening carefully. The man continued, saying she had raised her nose too high, which didn't suit her surroundings, asking if it made her like Pinocchio. Back in college, he said, you were infamous for not leaving your room. The girl listened nervously, holding the fork on the table. Isn't that a terrible judgment for a girl? He said. The friends whispered among themselves, saying Subin's ex was a taboo subject, but they couldn't stop the conversation. Then Jinsong added that, honestly, it was fair punishment, questioning how she planned to marry now and who would want her as a wife. You used to flirt boldly with other boys. You have no shame left, he said, making sure she understood. These words infuriated the girl. She grabbed the fork tightly and shouted at him to shut his mouth. But Ji Yejun, sitting next to her, held her hand, asking her to calm down and ignore such hurtful words. The man tried to soothe her, holding her hand firmly, looking at her carefully, and said she was wasting her energy. He continued holding her hand, telling her not to respond to every dog that barked at her. The girl calmed down slightly. Jinsong was furious that he called him a dog and yelled at Ji Yejun, asking if he understood who he was talking to. Ji Yejun stood, looked coldly at the man, and asked if he should know who he was dealing with. The man still held the girl's hand, gently looking into her eyes, telling her to ignore him. Jinsong, laughing, continued insulting her, asking if she had washed away her past and if this man next to her was her boyfriend. You're petty, the girl shouted, offended, but the man continued to provoke her with unpleasant words. He told Ji Yejun she had deceived him, but Ji Yejun calmly replied they didn't need to hear it. He continued holding her hand gently, looking at her with tenderness. She felt protected and surprised by his behavior. The man smiled warmly and calmly, asking if she had been upset hearing such insulting words. Subin trembled all over. He then asked if she wanted to move to another seat or go eat something tasty. Maybe you want something else? Jinsang asked. The girl grew angrier, saying she couldn't take it anymore. He stood, moving toward her, asking what she thought she was doing here, then reached to grab her hand. Ji Yejun gently pulled her close, holding her by the shoulder while holding a glass of water in the other hand, trying to protect her from the enraged man. When Jinsong wouldn't calm down and continued insulting her, the man splashed water in his face, trying to stop him and saying there was a limit to everything. The man was furious, water dripping down his face. Security arrived and told him he couldn't behave like that here. Ji Yejun placed the empty glass on the table and, without letting go of the girl, told him to stop immediately. Jinsong became even angrier, shouting about the water, but the security continued trying to escort him out. Don't you get it? He yelled at the security, struggling and resisting. The guests at the table began asking if the CEO was okay. Her friends rushed to the girl, shocked by what had happened, asking if she was all right. She thought he had completely lost his mind. What on earth had he been trying to do? Ji Yejun asked her if she was okay, wrapping an arm around her shoulder, and she replied that she was fine. Her friends saw the man and the girl chatting so sweetly, then asked if they had been flirting and smiled warmly. The man just smiled, but she shouted that there was no flirting, that it was nonsense. They weren't in that kind of relationship. In fact, they could barely stand each other. One of her friends turned to her and said it seemed like the CEO didn't agree with Subin. She was very surprised. The man gave her a strange look and smiled slightly. What a silly expression. Why did he make that face, she wondered. She looked at him very seriously and said that perhaps he should adjust his expression because she didn't like how he was looking at her. All the guests sitting nearby were watching them closely. Then the man admitted that, honestly, he had been chasing Subin one-sidedly. Her friends ran over to her, gently nudging her, saying they had known it would happen. What a surprise. Why had she kept it from them? And now they understood why Choi Jin-sang had been so jealous. She replied that it wasn't true, not to listen to him, that he was lying and they had misunderstood everything. You amaze me, the man said. He reminded her that he had come to see her the other day, then smiled at her and asked, "Let's get married." She was furious and confused, not understanding why he was saying this now. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you proposing this now? She shouted. She was surprised, but he gently took her finger and promised that he would take good care of her. Looking at her with loving eyes, he told her to stop wandering and settle down with him. She looked at him, thinking there was no way she could refuse. God, could this really be true? She thought. He took her hand and suggested they leave. Once they were outside and the door closed behind them, she yelled that he had completely lost his mind and demanded to know why he had said such nonsense in front of her friends. He pressed a finger to her forehead and asked how she could make a scene after he had helped her. She replied that nobody had asked him to help. Determined, he said he didn't think she had the right to speak that way, but she objected. Then he remembered those school days, the quiet talks between kids, their eyes scanning him from head to toe. Those cold stares were expected. She felt a slight shiver run through her body, but he reminded her that she had helped him back then, even though he had asked her to. "That's what I thought," she replied. He stood there quietly, watching her. The memories of those school days and everything he had endured back then pained him deeply. Subin tried to understand why he had done it and started yelling at him to speak plainly, not to try and deceive her. They stood there for a long time in silence, staring at each other until she asked if he hadn't wanted to help her. At least that's what she thought. He didn't respond. She continued, asking if he wanted them to believe they were going to get married. Ji Yejun met a strange expression, and she demanded to know if that had been his plan, and why he had put on such a show. He paused thoughtfully, then said it seemed she had become smarter. He wanted to see how she would react to his words. "What? Are you crazy?" she shouted. She was furious again, but he said it was better this way. She was so angry that she waved her hand in front of his face, demanding to know why he had said they had met before. Flailing her arms, she slipped and nearly fell. She barely caught herself and screamed in fright. He noticed she was losing her balance, quickly stepped forward, reached out, and caught her. As always, he tried to help her. She looked at him, terrified, unable to understand what had happened or why she had almost fallen. Her eyes showed fear, anger, and surprise all at once. As they continued walking, he asked how she hadn't broken her head by now. She shot back, "Are you serious?" He tried to walk ahead and leave her alone, but she stopped him. He paused and suggested they grab a bite to eat. The girl was annoyed, remembering his earlier words about her being wiser now and that it was better this way. She muttered to herself, "Maybe look at yourself first." She then recalled weddings and her friends, thinking it was true that she didn't see them often, but she couldn't avoid them forever. "All right, it's fine," she thought. The water was already spilled, so agreeing to go eat with him seemed acceptable. She stood lost in thought when suddenly he approached her, looked straight into her eyes, and asked if she wasn't coming. "Let's go eat," he said. She just smiled. "You want me to eat with you?" she asked. "And then you'll leave me alone, right?" "If we eat, you eat." She wanted him to leave her in peace as soon as possible. The man thought for a moment and then said, "Subin, you're quite a contradictory person." He liked that about her character. She stared at him, thinking that in some ways he was completely right. She really was a contradictory person. "Food is just food," he said. "Like chocolate milk, it's just chocolate milk." At first, she didn't understand what he meant. As they walked on, he remarked that he hadn't expected her to be so sensitive about having lunch with him. "If it bothers you that much," he said, "let's just grab something to drink. I'll buy you whatever you want." She hesitated and then remembered. Subin remembered the chocolate milk and how back in school, she had first approached him, asking if he hadn't eaten yet and if he was hungry. "What's wrong with chocolate milk?" she thought. She was grateful for what he had done and accepted his gesture, though she wondered how it might have affected his feelings. That was something she had once told Ji Yejun when they were kids. The girl stood there, trying to understand why everything happening now reminded her of those old school days. He stopped, looked at her, and said he was a bit busy, so they should hurry. She paused again, thinking he had said the exact same words when they were children. A wave of fear swept over her. "All right, let's go," she said, slowly following him. She thought to herself, when he frowns, he looks so attractive. I hate admitting it, but honestly, he does look good. Nothing about him leaves me speechless, she thought. In reality, she felt a storm of emotions. She felt she should thank him for standing up to Choi Jin-sang. It had even been kind of fun and enjoyable. She wondered why Ji Ye-jun had never thanked her for that favor. Things she hadn't understood before suddenly made sense as she had grown older. Carrying her bag on her shoulder, she hurried to catch up with him. He had told her he was pressed for time and in a big rush. While catching up, she mentioned she planned to order something expensive and would drink costly alcohol, but he agreed. After a while, they arrived at a very luxurious car parked near the wedding ceremony venue. Wow, what a beautiful sedan, she thought as she got in, but he asked what she wanted to eat. She hesitated, unsure what to order. The girl pretended not to hear him at first, but eventually said it was up to him since he was paying. Knowing she liked meat, he suggested finding a place that served it. She liked not having to choose herself, so she lifted her chin proudly and agreed. He pressed the gas harder, and the car sped off. Wait for me, steak, she thought, planning to ask him to order beef. They sped through the city at night when his phone rang. Pulling it from his pocket, he saw it was his grandfather calling. Hello, he answered. His grandfather asked where he was, and the man replied that he was in the city and driving. "What happened?" he asked. His grandfather explained that his grandmother felt very ill and had lost consciousness. The news filled him with worry. Upon hearing this, something clicked in his mind, and he sharply turned the car in another direction at high speed. She didn't understand and shouted, asking why he turned the car, but he gripped the wheel tighter and drove on without explaining. Turning to look at him, she asked what was wrong with his expression, what had happened, and where they were going. He explained that his grandfather had called and said his grandmother had lost consciousness. Subin was shocked by the news. Finally, she understood why he was rushing. He was deeply worried, driving fast and barely speaking. She knew Jia-jun wouldn't have helped her purely from the heart. She was certain his grandmother was behind his actions. Whenever he offered help, he never came alone. He had her grandmother's secretary with him. She had always wanted a chance to thank her grandmother, and she told him he needed to hurry. She urged that they leave quickly, worried they might be too late. Arriving at the hospital, the man quickly found the room where his grandmother lay and quietly sat on a chair beside her bed. She looked completely exhausted, slowly opened her eyes and glanced around. He sat silently, watching her. Then he suddenly rose, looked at his grandmother, and asked if she had come too. Weakly, she replied yes. He was overjoyed, and she teased that she had made him worry. He took her hand firmly. "You can't leave me," he said, feeling as if his heart might burst. Looking at him with eyes full of love, she gently held his hand and said she could never leave him. She kept holding his hand, and he didn't let go for a moment. "I'll win this battle," she said. "Illness like this is nothing." The door to the room was open, and Subin stood in the hallway, nervously clutching her bag. Standing there, she wondered what to do. The atmosphere was so intense that she wished she had stayed in the car. She tried to calm herself, telling herself not to cry, but also worried about ruining the mood by going in to thank him for the borrowed money. She hesitated for a long time standing by the door before deciding to quietly peek inside. As she gently opened the door, she didn't notice her grandfather standing there. He was surprised and studied her closely. "Who are you?" he asked, adjusting his glasses to get a better look. He couldn't understand why this lady had entered, and if she had come to visit his wife. The girl greeted him politely, tilting her head slightly, and explained that she was a friend of Jia-jun. Embarrassment immediately washed over her. He studied her silently for a long moment, trying to understand. She worried she had made a mistake by claiming to be his friend. "You're Jia-jun's friend?" he asked, taking her hand. "Oh my, you came with him to visit grandmother." He held her hand for a long time without letting go. He asked if she had been with Jia-jun when he answered the call and rushed here. She nodded in agreement. "Grandmother, look who's here," he said, still holding her hand. She felt extremely awkward. "This lovely lady, Jia-jun's friend," he added. Subin stood there, stunned, unable to speak. Jia-jun approached his grandfather and asked him to wait, which surprised him. Subin thought this was the first time anyone had called her charming. "Jia-jun's friend?" the grandmother asked, astonished. Subin tried to respond but didn't even know what to say. The woman raised her head slightly to get a better look and asked why Subin was there, wanting to get to know her better. As she tried to support herself on the bed, her hand slipped and she began to fall. "God, help me!" the grandmother cried out in fright. Jia-jun panicked, fearing she would fall. He looked at Subin sitting nearby and shouted for her to hold her. The girl quickly stretched out her arms, catching the grandmother. Being nearby, she saved her from falling. "Are you okay?" she asked, holding her by the shoulder. The grandmother said she was fine and was deeply grateful to Subin for saving her. Subin smiled, pleased that the atmosphere in the room had shifted naturally. Even the grandmother brightened and smiled. "What a lovely girl Jia-jun has. What's your name?" asked the grandmother. "Shin Subin," she replied. The grandmother said even her name was beautiful. They began chatting warmly. The grandmother asked how long she had known Jia-jun, and the girl said since elementary school. "Oh my, so long," the grandmother said, gently stroking her hands. "Such a beautiful girl is dating my grandson." Subin felt a strange sensation. No one had ever looked at her so tenderly before. Memories of her ex-boyfriend's family, who had never accepted her or their upcoming marriage, resurfaced, causing pain. That had been her reason for not wanting to marry again. Perhaps remembering their mistreatment hurt her heart. Then the grandmother said she was very happy to meet her, and Subin wished her a speedy recovery. After saying goodbye to her grandmother, the girl stepped out of the hospital room and walked down the hallway. The man followed behind her. They moved in silence, not exchanging a single word. He looked at Subin, wondering if he had misjudged her. Soon after, they both stepped outside. They got into the car together and started driving, still without saying a word. Each was lost in their own thoughts. The silence between them only made the atmosphere heavier. Words were hard to find, so they just kept driving quietly. The girl felt uneasy about everything that had just happened and tried to start a conversation. But the man suddenly suggested eating gopchang, even adding that he knew a good spot nearby. They entered a nice little restaurant, sat down, and the man ordered gopchang along with a bottle of soju. He poured himself a drink. The girl watched him silently. Thirsty, Jia-jun drank the glass in one go and set it back on the table. He looked at her seriously. If she had no negative thoughts about marriage, he asked, why wouldn't she just accept his proposal? The girl was overwhelmed, unsure of what to say. For now, all she managed was that she felt sorry for his grandmother. The man reminded her that the money he had lent her wasn't even his. She had suspected as much and simply nodded. He paused, then explained where the money really came from and why he had turned to his grandmother for help. When he came to her, his grandmother had asked what was wrong, but he couldn't bring himself to explain. She reassured him that he could always tell her everything honestly. He couldn't reveal the full truth, so instead he told her that a friend who had once helped him was now in serious trouble. His grandmother listened carefully while he admitted that he wanted to help that friend, even though he wasn't sure his intentions were completely selfless. Loving him dearly, his grandmother agreed to help, but told him not to say a word to his parents. "This has to stay just between us," she had said. The man confessed that the money had been secretly set aside by his grandmother, hidden from his parents. The girl was shocked to hear that. To make it clear, he repeated that he had taken the money from his grandmother and admitted he still felt guilty about it. Normally, he hated playing on people's sympathy, but in this case, there was no other way. He knew Shin Soo-bin was exactly the kind of person who would react to it. They sat in the cafe talking. The girl thought back to when her world had seemed to collapse under her feet, pulling her deeper into despair. During that darkest time, when she desperately needed medicine for her sick father, the boy and his grandmother had been the ones to reach out a helping hand. For that, she felt deeply grateful to his grandmother. No matter what, she owed her. Still, no matter how cold she might have seemed, she had never wanted to deceive anyone with the idea of a marriage of convenience. Was marriage really the only option? The girl finally said aloud that marriage wasn't as simple as he imagined. But Yejun countered that his father never went back on his word. He was prepared to give up everything, even public appearances and possessions. Whether he showed it or not, Ji Yejun was already standing on the edge of a cliff. If it came down to it, he added, there would be no choice but to repay the debt he had once lent her. Then he spoke of his childhood. From the moment he was born, he had been unwanted. His maternal grandfather hated his daughter for leaving and drowned his anger in alcohol, beating him daily. Later, his mother took him away, and he was accepted into a new family. He recounted it all with pain in his voice. Yet even in the new family, no one recognized him except his grandmother, who had always loved and cared for him. Whenever guests came over, he overheard his mother introducing his younger brother as her eldest son. Those words cut deeply. He would stand outside the living room door, fists clenched, unable to enter, growing up believing he'd never be able to connect with others. He remembered his grandmother's words in the hospital as she held his hands. "Yejun, promise me you'll find true love and live a happy life." She had said she hoped he'd meet a good wife, someone who would cherish him until the very end, and that they'd spend the rest of their lives in love. The girl asked if his grandmother's last wish was to see him married. The man replied that he simply couldn't let her leave this world without seeing that wish fulfilled. The girl lifted her glass, pausing thoughtfully. She admitted that his grandmother truly meant a lot to him. The man, surprised, asked what she meant. She brushed it off, poured herself a drink, and downed it. Setting the empty glass back on the table, she asked why he insisted it wasn't true, when she didn't understand the reason. Soo-bin confessed that it felt as though he was trying to take his father's fortune and everything else. Then she asked if it was all because of her. She added that it was no wonder he felt different from the rest of his family, except for his grandmother. Yet inwardly, she thought he might actually be worse than the others. Running her fingers along the glass, she laughed lightly and told him it was time to come clean. Soo-bin grabbed the bottle, poured herself another drink, and asked what exactly he was planning. The man only told her she was right about everything. He explained that he was only the family's son in name, but in truth, he had nothing to do with them. His father had never given him a chance to achieve anything on his own, he said bitterly, because he was still being controlled even now. Ji Yejun poured her another drink and went on. As promised, he would give her the property after everything was done, and she'd be free to live however she wanted, starting fresh. But the girl frowned. Were they trying to form some kind of crime gang? The alcohol was getting to her. She then asked if he was planning to rob his own house. Laughing, he told her it wasn't such a bad comparison. Not long after, she grew completely drunk, repeating his name over and over before laying her head on the table. He told her to just say what she wanted, but she couldn't respond. She was feeling far too sick. Thinking about his childhood, the girl felt deep pity for him. She asked if it had been unbearably hard for him. With a sigh, she admitted that she wanted to comfort him, but she was afraid he wouldn't like it. She said she couldn't bring herself to say such things, but he probably thought she looked down on him. The girl's words hit him hard. Angrily, he shouted back, asking if she really thought he needed her pity. Nothing made him angrier than being treated with sympathy. Ji Yejun was furious. He told her not to show him any pity, but instead to just accept his proposal, insisting it would help them both. The girl lifted her head and looked at him carefully. She admitted she knew he hadn't always been such a bad person. He calmed down a little and said he was glad she realized that everyone makes mistakes. Subin then asked if he really hated her so much, but in his eyes she saw the complete opposite. He answered uncertainly. She pointed out that he didn't even know if he hated her, calling him despicable. Angrily, he told her not to call him that. He explained that he simply needed someone he could pay for this arrangement. That was why he had chosen her, he said. He warned that the moment she grew attached to him, she would become useless. The girl asked if he would just throw her away once that happened. He said if that was our question, then there was only one answer. When something becomes unnecessary, it gets discarded. He added that there was no reason to hold on to something useless. But before she could respond, the girl rested her head on the table. He pulled money from his pocket and placed it in front of her face. Seeing she wasn't in any condition to continue, he told her to call a taxi and promised they would talk again once she sobered up. Then he left, saying he would make sure she reconsidered her perspective. He walked away without looking back, reminding her that neither of them was standing alone on the edge. They were both there together. Half asleep, Subin heard him leave. Slowly lifting her head, she glanced around. He truly was gone, without even thinking of coming back. She cursed him silently, furious that he dared abandon a woman like that, leaving only taxi fare behind. Staggering slightly, she rose from her seat and headed for the exit. Outside, the girl waited for her bus and climbed aboard. Holding onto the rail, she struggled to stay steady on her feet. She remembered how, before leaving the cafe, he had left money on the table for a taxi. She wondered absent-mindedly where she could have put it. While riding the bus, she slipped her hand into her pocket and found the money he had left. Anger flared in her, and she clenched it tightly in her fist. So this is reality, she thought as she stepped off at her stop, watching the bus disappear into the night. The next morning at work, the first thing she did was sit at her desk, open her notebook, and start thinking about how she could repay her debt. His words echoed in her mind. He had said he needed someone he could simply pay for this, and that was why he chose her. Thoughts of Ji Yejun hadn't left her since yesterday. She wondered when she could finally pay off her debt so he would leave her alone. And now, opening her notebook, she saw the same number, 10 million. For 8 years, she had worked different jobs and saved, but unexpected expenses had eaten into her savings. No matter how much she wanted to eat something nice, wear something new, or buy something for herself, she always had to refuse. Her life had been filled with sacrifice. Only now, after so many years, did it fully hit her. Her debt was massive. The realization terrified her. She remembered his words. He had already given her 10 years without interest, yet she still said she would pay him back someday. He had asked how exactly she planned to do that. The girl fell into despair, but then told herself she would not give up. She could do this, because this was her reality. She picked up her pen and began writing down each step she needed to take. Even if her payments got delayed, she believed she could make it work. She thought that if she tried to repay the whole sum at once, she would end up living in even harsher, more miserable conditions. If she chose to pay him from her salary, she realized she would need 2 or 3 more jobs. Resting her pen against her lips, she tried to gather her thoughts. With all of this weighing on her, even the idea of marriage seemed impossible. Debt wasn't something that could just be erased by someone else's help, and chasing money made life unbearably unhappy, she thought. Even though Subin tried her hardest to earn as much as possible, the very thought of selling herself disgusted her. Then she wondered if maybe she had just become boring. Still, there were always other paths. Was she simply too proud? Remembering what he had told her, she thought, it's only 1 year. Could I just close my eyes to everything for 1 year? If she agreed to 1 year of marriage, it could make both of them happy. It might even solve all their problems. Then she wouldn't have to watch her parents suffer anymore. She loved them dearly. She sat lost in thought until a knock startled her. Her assistant entered, asking if they were ready for opening, and she answered yes. Subin spent the entire day working at her cafe, polite and welcoming to every guest. Late at night, after finishing, she headed home. At the bus stop, she climbed onto her usual bus, exhausted, eager to finally get home. She couldn't wait to rest. Tomorrow was her day off, and at last she would be able to sleep in and treat herself to something tasty. But as she neared her home, someone called her name. She stopped, wondering if she had imagined it. Turning around, she was stunned to see the guy. the one who had once pushed her away. He said it had been a long time. He asked how she had been, but she only stared at him before walking on without answering. She had no desire to speak with him. She shouted for him not to come near her. He stopped, staring at her in surprise. She grew furious, yelling that he shouldn't even dare to approach her, warning that if he took one step closer, she wouldn't hold herself back. But he caught up, touched her forehead with his hand, and she just looked at him silently. All he said was an apology. After their breakup, she had often wondered how she would react if she saw him again. Now he admitted he knew she was shocked by his sudden appearance. When he tried to touch her again, the girl pushed him away, shouting that it was useless and he shouldn't dare. Subin was stunned by his return and asked why he was there and what he wanted. He only stood in silence, staring at her. He had thought she would be glad to see him, but her reaction left him speechless. What a disgrace, she thought. She had promised herself she wouldn't waver if she met him again. Yet here she stood, not even knowing what to say. The guy wondered aloud where to begin, but the girl stayed silent. He asked what he needed to do to make her feel better. She asked if he would actually do it if she told him, and when he said he would try, she demanded that he disappear from her sight. He told her she could even hit him if she wanted. She was completely free to act as she pleased. To her, his words sounded pitiful. Subin snapped back, saying she wasn't like him, not someone who hit others. He asked if she was still angry at him over the past, guilt weighing heavy in his voice. She reminded him that many years had passed since their breakup, yet he hadn't changed. Even if he did, he would never deserve her forgiveness, so she told him to leave quietly. While they were talking, her phone rang. Seeing it was from an unknown number, she hesitated. Normally, she never answered calls from strangers, but thinking that if he weren't standing here, she would have ignored it. She picked up and greeted the caller. A familiar voice answered, saying it was him. She was shocked, then lifted her head proudly and pretended to be delighted by the call. She smiled at first, then said he shouldn't be calling again since she had already told him to rest that night. Ji-Jun was the one calling, and he was completely thrown off by how she spoke to him, since he never expected such a response. The girl called him darling and teased him for missing her so much. Her voice sounded soft and tender, and the man standing beside her flinched at what he heard. After a pause, the caller asked if this really was Subin's number. The girl cursed internally, realizing she had just called Ji-Jun darling by mistake. She kept the conversation going. Ji-Jun, still puzzled, asked if she had eaten something strange, but she only asked where he was at the moment. After a long pause, he answered that he wasn't darling, but he was standing near her mother's store. She wondered why he was there. Then, claiming she was at a bus stop, she asked if he could come pick her up. She added that she was with a very troublesome person, though her ex-boyfriend didn't catch the meaning and asked what she was trying to hint at. The girl tried to leave and told him to hurry, but he misunderstood her words and declared that things would be settled here and now. Ji-Jun said he would be there in 5 minutes. She turned to her ex and asked if he had heard that and whether she needed to explain any further. He just stood there in silence. She pointed out that they had reached some sort of conclusion and asked why he wouldn't go his own way. Still, he didn't leave. She grew more anxious, realizing she had no plan B. She looked completely lost. Finally, she shouted at him to go. If Ji-Jun really showed up now, she wondered what would happen next. The man asked if she was getting married. She replied that of course she was, and asked if he really thought her life had ended the moment he left her. He denied it, clenching his fist, and admitted she was a good person. He looked crushed, regretting how things had turned out. Subin turned her head away and said she wouldn't thank him for those words, then asked him to leave her alone. As she started to walk away, he caught up, grabbed her hand, and told her to wait because there was something he needed to check. Subin turned to him in surprise, thinking their problem was that they knew each other too well. They could see right through one another. She grew worried that if he met Ji-Jun, her lies would be exposed. But the man kept holding her hand, unwilling to let go. Whether he was curious or suspicious, Gunho always insisted on confirming things himself. Subin pulled her hand free and screamed at him to let go. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Gunho said her boyfriend had arrived and was standing right behind her. She thought it was too soon for him to show up, but then Ji-Jun quietly came up behind her and greeted her affectionately. He walked up with a charming smile, wrapped his arms around her, and asked if she hadn't waited too long. Then he turned to the man standing across from them and suggested he grab someone else's wrist instead, and let her go peacefully. Gunho released her hand. The girl thought it was madness. She turned to her ex and declared that this was her boyfriend, the man who had become her husband. Gunho looked devastated, at a loss for words, until his phone suddenly rang. He excused himself and picked up. His professor was calling, so he became distracted with the conversation. While he was on the phone, Ji-Jun leaned down, whispered in her ear, and asked who exactly was going to be her husband. Shocked, she asked what he meant, but he pulled her tightly against him and demanded an answer right then. Did she want to marry him or not? He pressed her again for her answer. The girl fumed inside, wondering what on earth he was doing and why he couldn't see the situation clearly. But he kept holding her close, refusing to let her go. Subin told him this was the worst situation of her life. Thankfully, her ex didn't hear it since he was still on the phone. Ji Yejun just smiled at her and said it was actually the perfect time to force her to speak up. She didn't know what to say. Looking completely crushed, she stood there helpless, unable to decide what to do. She thought to herself that Ji Yejun was the biggest scoundrel in the world, the worst opponent, armed with unmatched manipulation skills. Still, he told her they should get married. Holding her in his arms, he waited for her answer. She stared at him, thinking he was exactly as she had expected, a sly fox who never missed a chance to chase money. Meanwhile, Gung-ho kept talking on the phone, oblivious to what was happening right behind him. Ji Yejun gripped her shoulders and pressed again, asking if she was going to answer him. She looked utterly lost. He pulled her even closer. Subin asked if he was really going to do this, and he said yes, his next move would depend entirely on her answer. She asked what would happen if she didn't respond. He pretended not to understand, but she accused him of playing dumb. She muttered that whoever he was unbearably irritating. Ji Yejun guessed that the man on the phone must be her ex. He glanced at him, standing there with his phone in hand, watching them intently. Ji Yejun demanded that Subin answer before he counted to 3. He wrapped his arms tightly around her shoulders, holding her close, and began to count. 1, pulling her even tighter against him. The man counted 2, but the girl tried to stop him. Gung-ho stood nearby, silently waiting to see what would happen next. When the man said 3, the girl began to resist, shouting loudly that he was a bastard. She added that it was only for a year, and so she would do it. Ji Yejun smiled, pulled her even closer, and said it felt wonderful to hear her agree. After she calmed down a little, he turned her face toward him, leaned in, and kissed her deeply. In that moment, she forgot all her troubles. The girl looked completely lost. The kiss had been unexpected, and a soft trembling spread through her entire body. The man stayed silent, staring at her with piercing eyes. Then Ji Yejun smiled and confessed that he loved her. He turned to Gung-ho, saying that he probably had plenty of other things to do, so they would leave first. Hugging the girl, he reminded her that they were supposed to go to the Gopchang restaurant, and if they stayed here any longer, they would miss all the fun. Pretending to be very much in love, he declared that they both adored pork, and the girl gladly went along with the act. Together, they headed to the restaurant. They wished Gung-ho well, telling him to take care and have a safe trip. Left alone, he simply stood there, watching them walk away. When they entered the restaurant, the girl's first order was alcohol. She looked deeply upset, sitting with an empty glass already in her hand. Sitting across from her, the man noticed her confusion and asked why she couldn't seem to collect her thoughts. He said the job was done and reached for food, but the girl's face burned red with anger. Pushing her chair back, she stood up furiously, waving her fists. She shouted that he was about to receive a deadly blow and that she would finally get rid of him. He told her to look at herself, pointing out she still had the habit of waving her hands around. She screamed back, demanding what exactly he had just said. He argued that he had helped her, yet she was acting like an animal. Hearing that, she grew even angrier. Subin screamed at him, asking how he dared. He teasingly asked if she meant when he kissed her. Laughing nervously, she admitted that maybe it had been necessary after all. She thought to herself that, at least, he hadn't kissed her lips. She replayed the moment in her mind. His hand had partly covered her mouth, and the kiss had landed on her cheek. She still couldn't calm down, but he explained that he had only done it for the sake of the show. She cursed him, calling him vile. He called her stupid, saying she couldn't understand his behavior when he saw her with her ex-boyfriend. He asked if she really thought a man would simply stand by while someone tried to steal his fiancée right in front of him. He explained that her ex would have suspected her, and unless he had seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed her. Ji Yejun poured her another glass of alcohol and asked whether she thought her ex would believe such a lie. She lowered her head in silence. She picked up the full glass, drank, and admitted she couldn't deny it. He was right. After a long pause, Subin said she wanted to believe they had fooled him, but something still troubled her. She stared at the man across from her, watching him calmly eat and somehow try to listen and understand her. She wondered what she should do about the wedding, then drained another glass and ordered another bottle of soju. Sitting in the restaurant, she drank bottle after bottle, trying desperately to forget everything. After 5 bottles of soju, she began laughing, saying she had drunk too much. Then she started shouting at him to leave her alone, but he gently calmed her, telling her she was just a little drunk. The girl suddenly asked how he even had her number. He told her she didn't need to know, it had been easy to get. She called him crazy. She yelled at him, demanding to know if he was still spying on her data. He explained that since she didn't want to talk to him directly, he had chosen a more polite way to reach her. The girl asked when he had become so polite, since he had always criticized people to their faces. He only smiled in response. She asked if she could pose him a question. When he agreed, she asked why he had chosen her. With a smirk, Ji-Jun said not to expect him to admit he liked her, because she wasn't his type. She was surprised. Outraged, she declared that she didn't like him either. He replied that was exactly what he had meant. He said she was simply the best partner for a moderate life and a quiet divorce. Taking a glass, he drank, while she laughed at his words. He added that she was fun to tease, so he wouldn't be bored living with her. Slamming her fist on the table, she shouted that he was a scoundrel and that she wished she could shut his foul mouth. Subin yelled that she'd had enough, stood up, and declared she was going home. He tried to stop her, saying their talk wasn't finished. She shouted that it was already late and that her mother would beat her to death if she didn't get home soon. She tried to leave, but the alcohol overwhelmed her. Her vision darkened, her head spun, and her body weakened. The girl collapsed to the floor. Ji-Jun panicked, asking what had happened and how she felt. The next morning, the girl woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the window. She looked around, confused by the strange ceiling and the unfamiliar place. Glancing around the room once more, she turned toward the bright sunlight streaming in, then suddenly heard a voice right beside her. It was Ji-Jun, asking how she had slept. She realized with shock that he was lying next to her, watching her now that she was awake. He yawned, pretending he hadn't slept well, while she stared at him in panic, unable to understand what was happening. Subin couldn't grasp why she was in his bed, then quickly pulled back the blanket to check. The man tried to doze off again, but she yanked the blanket over herself and screamed in horror, asking how this could have happened. He asked what she meant. Looking at him lying naked beside her, she demanded to know why he wasn't wearing clothes. He answered casually that he simply couldn't sleep dressed. With a trembling voice, she asked if they had slept together. Smiling at her terrified face, he told her that, as she could see, they had. Subin asked why he had a tissue in his nose and if he had a nosebleed. The man replied that she had hit him. The girl, surprised, asked if she had really hit him so hard that his nose started bleeding. The man didn't know what to say and just rubbed the tip of his nose with his finger. He asked if he really had to answer. The girl started laughing loudly, saying it was absolute madness. She kept laughing, insisting that it couldn't be true. But Ji-Jun knew she remembered very little about the previous night. He looked at her silently, then asked if she didn't even remember what happened yesterday. The girl, frightened, glanced under the blanket. She slowly began pulling the blanket toward herself to wrap it around, but the man jokingly shouted that it was his blanket. She quickly yanked the blanket off him, wrapped herself in it, and started running away in embarrassment. On her way, her foot hit something. When she saw it was a bra, she screamed loudly and demanded to know why it was there. Ye-Jun found it amusing to watch her running around the room in panic, not knowing what to do. Smiling, he teasingly asked what was wrong with her. The girl screamed, demanding to know where her clothes were and where they had gone. She shouted that she needed her clothes immediately. The man just shrugged and covered his mouth with his hand, smiling, while she kept yelling in fear that he might not let her out. He finally pointed toward the bathroom, saying her clothes were there. The girl shouted back that she wouldn't forget this. Subin rushed into the bathroom, sat down on the floor, and burned with shame. No matter what, I can't do this. I can't even look him in the eyes anymore, she thought. She cried for a long time, sitting on the floor. Then she lifted her eyes and saw her clothes hanging on the rack, still wet. First, I need to get dressed, she thought. Did I really wash my clothes yesterday? And how exactly did I even wash them? While putting them on, she thought the top felt a little too small. Or maybe it was just her imagination. Was I even wearing underwear, she wondered? When she saw her reflection in the mirror, she was shocked. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess. What exactly happened last night, she thought. Does this mean the story involves Ji-Jun, she thought, realizing how ambiguous it sounded. First, she should wash her face, she thought, but then stood by the door for a long time, not wanting to go out. What if something I don't even want to think about really happened? I'm glad if nothing happened. But if it did, what am I supposed to do then? She wondered. Last night was a mistake. A mistake. It truly was a mistake, Subin thought. But that also applies to Ji-Jun. The girl wanted to end all of this as soon as possible. Opening the bathroom door, she thought it was time to move from words to action. When she stepped into the room, the man asked if she had rented the bathroom. Embarrassed, she muttered yes. He asked why she had taken so long to come out, saying he thought she had fallen and broken her back. She just looked at him with frightened eyes. She replied that she hadn't broken anything, and even if she had, he would have been the only one able to take her to the hospital. The man told her to move aside and walked into the bathroom. As she tried to leave, she stumbled and fell. She screamed that he was a freak, but he ignored her and grabbed a towel. "Damn you," she thought, unsure whether to leave things as they were. "This bastard," she fumed, glaring angrily at him. He looked at her sternly and told her to shut the door since he was trying to take a shower. Duh, but she stepped back toward the bathroom and said she needed to tell him something. He replied that he was listening. The girl was flustered, not knowing how to start, but finally said, "Last night." The man cut her off, suggesting they pretend it never happened. He asked if she wasn't planning to dump all the blame on him over this. She repeated his word in shock. Dump the blame? He reminded her she had already hit him and pointed to his nose, still stuffed with tissue. She thought she needed to get rid of this humiliation to preserve her dignity. Clenching her fist tightly, she told him he knew her well, and that no matter how drunk she had been, doing something like that was wrong. She added that if they really had slept together, then it was a mistake. But the man just stared at her in silence. He stepped closer and asked what exactly she considered a mistake. The girl didn't know what to say. Smiling, he studied her closely and told her to repeat what mistake she meant. She stayed silent, overwhelmed by strange feelings. Even though she was drunk and couldn't control herself, it was still both their responsibility, she thought, standing across from him with her eyes lowered. But why? Why do I feel like I'm the only sinner here? She wondered, before asking what he wanted. Subin said she would do whatever was in her power. Ji-Ye-jun looked at her in surprise and reminded her of the promise she had made last night. She had no idea what he meant. He said that what he wanted was something he thought she already understood. Then he hinted at saving her from her ex. She asked herself if she had missed something. Wait. This situation, she thought, pausing in confusion. This is strange, Subin thought. Something about Ji-Ye-jun's smile seemed unusual. But then the phone rang, and she told him to wait while she answered the call. Ji-Ye-jun said he would go take a shower. Meanwhile, she picked up the phone, confused about who would call her at such a time. Realizing it was her mother, she panicked. I'm doomed, she thought, staring fearfully at the screen. Her mother asked if she had spent the night at Jisoo's. The girl, nervous and unsure what to say, replied that yes, she had. Her mother said she understood. She explained that she thought Subin might be surprised to return home and find nobody there, since she had left in a hurry without sending a message. She added that her father had gotten slightly injured from a fall down the stairs but was being cared for at the hospital. So not to worry. 3 years earlier, after an accident, her father had ended up in a wheelchair. It was a miracle he managed to walk again, but the right side of his body was paralyzed and now he limped. Her mother asked if Subin could lock up the shop since she had rushed out and only slammed the door shut. She reassured her daughter that she was fine. Subin asked if her father was really okay. Her mother insisted he wasn't badly hurt. But he's probably covered in bruises now, Subin thought. She said the same thing last time too. Then she heard something drip onto the floor nearby. Ji-Ye-jun, who had just come back from the shower, walked up to her and asked if something had happened. The man put his arm around her shoulders, not understanding what was going on. The girl explained that her father had gotten hurt. She was very upset and quickly got up from the floor where she had been sitting. The man, confused, stepped back a little. Right after that, she rushed to the door, and he ran after her because she had left her phone behind and he wanted to return it. She was shouting that she needed her bag, but she couldn't find it anywhere. Ye-jun eventually found the bag in a car parked outside. He opened the car door and offered to give her a ride, but she just stood there, stunned, staring at him. Then he grabbed her hand, told her to get in the car quickly, and gently pushed her onto the seat. Once inside, he asked if they should stop at the store first. She remembered how her mother had told her not to worry, but she couldn't help biting her thumb and thinking, what if this time her father was really hurt? She sat deep in thought, looking as if she didn't hear anything around her. Ji-Ye-jun walked up to the car window, snapped his fingers to get her attention, and told her to snap out of it. When he got into the car, he offered her a blanket, telling her to put it on since her clothes were still wet. The girl looked surprised at the mention of the blanket. She insisted she was fine, but then suddenly sneezed. He stared at her in disbelief. She picked up the blanket and rubbed her nose with her hand. The man asked if she didn't know she was supposed to cover her mouth when sneezing. She agreed with him, but then unexpectedly sneezed again. He wiped his face with his hand and told her that she really needed to cover her mouth. Ji-Ye-jun then turned up the music, started the car since they were in a rush, and glanced at the girl sitting next to him, lost in thought. She asked him if he didn't have another blanket since he was even more wet than she was. He replied that he didn't need one. She told him he could catch a cold and insisted he either cover himself or take the blanket she was holding out. He answered that he'd use one if there was a second blanket and told her not to meddle in his business. Subin looked at him and noticed water still dripping from his hair since he had just taken a shower. She commented that he was spraying water all over the car. He brushed it off, saying at least he wouldn't catch a cold. She challenged him, asking if he was so sure he hadn't already caught one. She told him not to be so stubborn and to take the blanket eventually. He told her to relax and assured her that everything would be fine. They drove through the city for a long time until they finally reached the store because her mother had asked her to double-check whether she had locked the door. As she approached the door, she noticed she had tripped over a slipper. She realized the door hadn't been locked because of it. Once inside, she thought about how her mother hadn't even noticed she had left the house without shoes, and wondered why she always acted like that. The girl pressed her lips together, thinking that her mother's behavior didn't really mean much, and then went outside and locked the door. Ji Ye-jun, standing next to her, suggested driving her straight to the hospital, which made her pause and think. Then they drove through the city again. On the way, she called her mother once more to ask which hospital they were at. Her mother asked if she was already on her way, adding that she didn't have to come. The girl insisted, saying she was already in the car and just needed to know the address. She reassured her mother they were almost there and was about to hang up. Her mother suddenly called her name and she answered, saying she was listening. Her mother admitted she hadn't had coffee yet and asked her to bring some along. The girl agreed to pick it up. When she turned off the phone, she thought to herself that her mother had said her father was fine. She remembered how her mother always warned she'd be in big trouble if she went even a single day without coffee. She needed it to feel normal again. When they arrived at the hospital, the man stopped the car, went into a cafe, and came back with coffee. He handed it to her, saying it was for her mother. He passed her the cup, telling her to take it with her. She reacted with surprise, wondering why he was suddenly being so considerate and saying it felt gross. Upset, she told him he didn't need to take care of her and got out of the car, accidentally hitting her foot in the process. The pain was sharp. He asked if she could even walk on her own and then took her by the hand, telling her they should go. She cried out, demanding to know what he was doing and insisting she could walk by herself so he could let go. Ji Ye-jun told her to stop overreacting, but still didn't release her hand. The girl looked at him in surprise. Holding her hand, he pulled her along as they hurried down the street. Her foot hurt from hitting it earlier, but she tried to keep up. Watching him walking ahead, Subin thought to herself that he wasn't someone she could rely on. And she knew she shouldn't rely on a guy like him. But as they rushed toward the hospital entrance, still holding his hand, she realized she kept reaching out to him again and again. Once inside the hospital, Subin quickly ran ahead, trying to find her father's room. Standing at the door, she told the man she would go in alone. He looked at her and sighed silently. After making sure it was the right room, she heard her father's voice, asking her mother to scratch his back. She breathed a sigh of relief, realizing he seemed fine, and felt thankful. Joy filled her heart knowing her father was okay. She knocked on the door but froze when she overheard her parents talking, wondering when Subin would finally show them her boyfriend. Her father mentioned the guy she had seen last time, saying he had seemed polite. Her mother replied that maybe he'd come around next week. Her father wondered if things hadn't worked out, that maybe he just hadn't liked Subin. Listening outside the door, Subin thought to herself that, in her view, things really hadn't worked out. Her father smiled and said it was hard to believe since his daughter was so beautiful. Her mother reminded him that Subin had said he wasn't her type. Still standing outside, Subin thought about how her parents had never brought up such a conversation in front of her before. Her father sighed, saying that she simply didn't want to date anyone after her breakup with Gunho, and admitted he thought it was his fault. Subin smiled softly, remembering Park Gunho. Her mother suddenly yelled at her father to stop talking, hitting him lightly on the shoulder. Her father cried out dramatically, saying she was going to kill him, and joked that her arms were too strong. He told her to look at his back, saying it had gone numb. Her mother snapped at him, calling him a fool and warning him never to bring it up again. Her father said he had seen with his own eyes how that couple unexpectedly broke up right after setting their wedding date. At that moment, the door to the hospital room opened and Subin walked in, asking why she had to get married. Her father wondered who was there, then realized it was his daughter. He thought she came to see him. Her mother immediately asked about the store, wanting to know if Subin had closed it. Subin shouted in frustration, asking how many times she had to repeat that she didn't want to get married and telling them to stop talking about it. Her father, surprised, called out her name. Both parents stared at her in confusion, while her mother was at a loss for words. The mother glanced at her daughter, who stood holding a cup of coffee. She reminded Subin that she had asked for bottled coffee and questioned why she had bought expensive coffee again. Subin answered that if anyone overheard her, they would think the coffee was mixed with gold, but in reality, it was just coffee. Her mother said she had only wanted a small cup and then asked how many cups of coffee might fit into the mug Subin had brought. The girl laughed and admitted her mother was right, adding that she'd probably need to sell a few servings of tteokbokki and paper cups just to afford that kind of coffee. With a small laugh, Subin said marriage didn't mean much to her anyway, then simply smiled. She explained to herself that even if she married a wealthy man through a matchmaking service, she'd only end up being ridiculed because people would shiver at the idea of her drinking instant coffee. Subin admitted she didn't mind being unhappy herself, but she refused to let her family suffer. In her eyes, arguments between loved ones weren't terrible, they were just normal. Still, whenever her parents brought up the subject of marriage, she realized she didn't want to live with a man she didn't care about. Her mother, puzzled, asked who had ever told her that she needed to marry a rich man. Her mother explained that all they wanted was for Subin to meet a man she could spend the rest of her life with. But Subin told her mother to wake up and face reality. Subin firmly declared that no such man would ever exist in her life. Her father responded that he understood but admitted he was still worried about her. Her father asked if she truly wanted to stay under his protection until the end of his life. He confessed that he would have done the same himself if only he could live for 1,000 years. But then he reminded her that such a thing was impossible. Looking out the window at the rustling leaves, he reflected that no matter when or how their separation would come, it was inevitable. He added that she needed someone else she could lean on, and he asked if she understood what he meant. Ever since his accident 3 years ago, when he came close to death, he had developed the habit of always being prepared for it. Subin wondered aloud just how precious she was to her father if he couldn't leave her alone. But then she thought it was just selfishness. She asked how he could possibly judge the character of the man he expected her to live with. Frustrated, she thought something was wrong with this logic and concluded that she'd simply live on her own. Her father tried to call her name, but she cut him off, insisting it was her life and she would handle it herself. She told them both to leave her alone. Her mother then asked if she didn't like the man she had gone on a date with last time. Her mother pointed out that the man had seemed nice and his conditions were reasonable. Subin grew furious, asking if either of them even listened to her, and questioning what was wrong with both of them. Feeling deeply hurt, she explained that every time she went on a blind date, it only drove her mad because her parents had no idea what she had to endure there. Angry and emotional, she cried out to her parents that they didn't know anything about what she was going through. She realized she would finally have to tell them the whole truth. Her mother, shocked, stared at her and asked what she was talking about and what exactly she had heard. She was clearly worried about her daughter. But Subin thought to herself that no matter how bad her blind date partners were, she never wanted to complain to her parents about it. She didn't want them to know the truth. Finally, she confessed that those blind dates had slowly destroyed her self-esteem and made her feel worthless, all because of the insults she kept hearing. Her mother, horrified, demanded to know why Subin was only now speaking about it. Subin fired back, asking if her mother had ever even bothered to ask her about it. She accused her mother of caring only about how many blind dates she could send her on. Both parents were shocked to hear this. Subin said she liked being alone. She refused to waste her trust on someone who would eventually make her cry, so she'd rather live and die in solitude. In her heart, she thought, now they finally know everything. She turned and quickly headed for the door. Her mother called after her to wait, but Subin ignored her, thinking the whole situation was awful. When she stepped into the hallway, she noticed a young man had been standing outside the entire time, waiting for her. Looking at her, he realized something had happened. But Subin said nothing, too overwhelmed to speak. She hurried down the hallway, but her mother tried to catch up, calling out after her. Subin, however, pretended not to hear. Then her mother noticed the man standing near the door. She asked if he was Yejun. He confirmed it and politely asked if everything was all right. Miss Chang reassured him that it was. Laughing softly, Miss Chang asked why he had come, if it was to see Subin. She was genuinely glad to see Ji Yejun. He explained that he thought Subin might feel uncomfortable, so he had decided to wait outside. Miss Chang nodded, understanding. He then asked her to give his regards to the girl's father and told her not to worry about Subin. He promised he would visit again soon. Miss Chang stopped him as he turned to leave, grabbing his sleeve. When he asked what it was, she hesitated, unsure of how to phrase her question, feeling embarrassed. At last, she asked quietly if he had come to see Subin just to collect the borrowed money. She admitted she would never forget how he had helped them back then and promised she would make sure all the money was repaid. She asked if he was worried about the debt. Ji Yejun answered calmly, saying it was fine, but then asked how exactly she intended to repay it. He then said he would be leaving. Miss Chang replied that she understood, but begged him to please take care of Subin. He walked away in silence, while Miss Chang remained standing in the hallway. She pitied her daughter and worried about her deeply. Outside, Subin went to the bus stop but ended up missing her bus. She thought to herself that despite all the difficulties, she, her mother, and her father had still lived fairly well together. Sitting at the stop, she reflected that she had believed this life was enough. She wanted to tell her parents not to worry about her anymore. She sat there, lost in thought, until suddenly she felt someone's hand gently touch her shoulder. It was Ji Ye-jun. He offered to give her a ride home. She told him she was fine and would just take the bus. But he insisted that she didn't look well. His words angered her, and she asked if he was serious. Still, he urged her to get into his car. She didn't refuse, but soon after, she noticed something dripping onto her hand. The man went to sit behind the wheel, while Subin couldn't stop crying. Her tears just wouldn't end. When Ji Ye-jun got into the car, the girl wiped her tears with her hand and admitted that it was hurting her pride. She confessed that it was making her furious as she looked at him, and he silently handed her a tissue. The girl blew her nose into the tissue, and when the man turned on the music in the car, she began to cry even louder as soon as she heard it. She said that no one understood better than she did why her mom and dad wanted her to get married as soon as possible. And that realization made it hurt even more. She explained that ever since childhood, it had been marriage, 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 always the same thing. Being an only child, she had always dreamed of having several children. She admitted that she had wanted to get married and live happily ever after, dreaming of being a good wife and a wise mother. She remembered that her first, last, and only love, the one she had promised to marry, was Gunho until they broke up. She recalled that 3 years ago her father had been in an accident, and that unexpected tragedy eventually led to the end of her engagement. She had once told her mother that she felt comfortable even without being in a relationship, but her mom warned her not to speak as though she had failed at life. Her mother reassured her that she would still meet the right man, but Subin admitted she had changed her mind and didn't even know why she had wanted marriage so badly before. She pointed out that her parents didn't know the real reason for her breakup. She had told her mom that everything was fine and reminded her that all she really needed was her mom and dad. She thought to herself that the pain had been her burden alone. Since then, her fantasies about marriage had disappeared without a trace, filling her heart with mistrust and emptiness toward others. She told him that now he knew everything. She explained that she couldn't leave her parents alone and wondered what would happen if she told them she was ready to marry. Subin worried aloud that if they found out she was marrying because of a debt she couldn't repay, her parents would be devastated. She added that one day they would learn their daughter had gone into marriage fully aware of the outcome, and the man grew very thoughtful about her words. She emphasized that her parents were the only ones who had known how badly she wanted to marry. Clenching her fists, she said they wanted her happiness more than anyone else. She pointed out the situation she was currently in, admitting she wasn't in a position to chain someone with the bonds of marriage. The man then told her to let him be the one. Sniffling, the girl asked him what he meant, staring at him in surprise and thinking to herself how unexpected this was. Ji Ye-jun explained that if it was with him, the story would change completely. He admitted he might not be a good husband, but he could be a good son-in-law. He told her to think of her hands as tied up and said that he believed he had the key to free them. The girl shouted, asking if he had even understood her. She said that if she did marry him, what would he do a year from now? She argued that he would just end up stuck in her parents' hearts, but the man replied that she was the one who didn't understand. Not him. As they kept driving and talking, she clarified that it wasn't simply a matter of paying off a debt. They would be marrying only to live like single people. She explained she wanted to use marriage as a shield against the chains of the marital system. The man said he didn't want to be burdened with a lifelong mortgage and would move abroad once the terms of their contract ended. Ji Ye-jun added that he would come back once a year to see her parents. He reassured her there would be plenty of reasons to visit, so she shouldn't worry. He said they could easily pretend to be a good couple. He told her that if she ever met someone truly good, she just needed to let him know, and he would handle everything for her. The girl said she could judge him for everything, though she was clearly lost and didn't know what to do next. The man told her not to think of it as selling herself, but rather as innovative work, where she would only be trading some sense of self-respect. He called her a model daughter and asked what would happen if he pushed her to the bottom. Outraged, the girl demanded to know what he meant. Ye-jun promised that this marriage wouldn't ruin anyone's life or make anyone unhappy. The girl shouted, asking where his confidence came from, and he answered that he was just trying to convince her to agree. He asked if she had changed her mind, staring at her with such a serious look that it was as if he expected an immediate answer. He told her she looked tempting and admitted it would almost be strange not to accept such terms. He added that if she was too shy, then he'd just have to shake her up with all his strength. He said it was like her last chance, that in fact it was her last chance to accept his proposal, and told her to say so right away if she wasn't going to agree. He warned that if she didn't say anything before he counted to 3, she might lose her chance. Shocked, the girl asked if he meant right now, and he replied that yes, he meant exactly now. He told her he would count slowly, reminding her she'd have plenty of time to refuse if she wanted. After a short pause, he began to count. The girl was extremely confused and didn't know how to respond. When he counted to 3 and heard nothing, he became very angry. The man declared that he had done his part. He wished her a safe trip home and began unbuckling his seatbelt. The girl said she first needed to make sure of something. Surprised, the man asked what it was. She told him he didn't need to know. It was something she had to figure out for herself. He was very surprised. Subin then suggested they meet tomorrow after work and told him not to eat dinner because they would go out together. She added that she would buy something delicious for him, so he had better come with an empty stomach. The man promised he would eat however much she wanted and reminded her not to forget her word. She added that she would buy something delicious for him, so he had better come with an empty stomach. The man promised he would eat however much she wanted and reminded her not to forget her word. Ji Ye-jun drove off, while the girl, walking home, was very nervous but eventually thought that maybe it was worth trying. After a few steps, she heard her phone buzz with a new message. It was from Ye-jun, telling her he would pick her up at the hotel after work and that he'd see her tomorrow. Walking home, she thought to herself that it was fine. She just needed to confirm something for herself. The next day, after finishing work, Subin left the office. A colleague noticed a handsome man standing nearby. Another colleague shouted to the deputy manager, Subin, pointing out the very handsome man standing over there. The coworker exclaimed that it was a jackpot, calling him incredibly attractive. And indeed, the man looked stunning. Ji Ye-jun was truly a striking man. Subin laughed and told her colleague that she had rated this attractive man. The coworker replied that he was so good-looking that it made the world worth living in. Subin asked her colleague if she wanted her to handle it. The colleague shouted that if Subin could really pull it off, she would respect her for the rest of her life as deputy manager. Subin, with a sly look, told her to watch how she did it and learn. The colleague said their deputy manager was so cool and wondered if Subin would actually get his number. She even suggested they should make bets on it. Someone muttered that it was a shame they couldn't join the bet, then pointed out that the guy had smiled. The colleague, watching, whispered how handsome he was. Subin slipped her arm through the man's, glanced back at her colleague, and quietly whispered that the operation was successful. She waved slightly as she walked away, and the colleagues admitted she had really hit the jackpot. Once they arrived at the restaurant, Subin called the waiter and ordered a bottle of soju and some chicken feet. Ji Ye-jun was surprised and asked if that was really what she wanted to eat. Subin laughed, asking if he had seen their colleagues' shocked faces. She said it was adorable and so funny. Ji Ye-jun asked if it was really that funny, and she confirmed that it absolutely was. When the waiter brought their food, Subin exclaimed that it looked delicious. She then asked if he even knew how to eat it. Ji Ye-jun admitted, while opening the soju, that he had never tried it before. Subin was shocked but pleased. She told him to try it right away and handed him a chicken foot. He muttered something unpleasant under his breath. Ji Ye-jun said he wasn't going to eat with it, just drink. Subin asked if he was really planning to drink on an empty stomach. He reassured her that it would be fine, and she reluctantly agreed. Subin was secretly delighted that she had chosen a dish he didn't like. She thought to herself that she needed to get him drunk, but she wasn't sure how much Ji Ye-jun could handle. The more he drank on an empty stomach, the better. Ji Ye-jun, thinking she wouldn't be able to catch him off guard, asked her one more time what her answer would be. Subin said yes, but admitted she had a question out of curiosity. He told her to go ahead. She asked if there was really no one better than her. Was she truly the one he wanted to marry? The question threw him off, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. Then, after thinking, he said he simply couldn't do it without her. Subin laughed and said that if that was the case, he should give her 100 reasons why he wanted to marry her, and what made her different from the others. Ji Ye-jun asked if she was out of her mind. He seemed baffled and said he just couldn't believe the things she was saying. He told her he didn't need anyone else. She was enough, and she was beautiful. Subin admitted that it all felt so unexpected, and now she realized he was actually a very simple person. Subin remarked that he seemed to live a comfortable life. He shot back, asking why she would think that about him. Still chewing on chicken feet, Subin pointed out that last time, when he was sober, he had walked away without saying a word. He flinched and admitted that was true. He then asked if that was what she had wanted to confirm. Did she think he was the kind of scumbag who would take advantage of a drunk woman? He pressed further, asking if she had really just wanted to confirm whether they had slept together that night. Subin, amused, said he had a good sense of humor and downed a glass of soju. Ji Ye-jun, offended, told her she had completely misunderstood. He said no matter how much he hated himself, did she really think he was trash who preyed on drunk women? Subin asked how she could possibly trust him when she remembered nothing at all. He snapped back, asking why she was making a big deal out of something she couldn't even recall. But she reminded him that when she had asked if they had slept together, he had said yes. He froze and asked when he had ever said that. He explained that what really happened was that she had given him a nosebleed when she hit him with her hard head, and he had even cleaned her clothes after she threw up. He said he had tried to take her home so her parents could see how she had been behaving, but he had been so exhausted he just wanted to sleep. He insisted that he had slept on the couch so she wouldn't see him half naked beside her. Subin then asked why he had answered yes to her question about them making love. Their argument heated up. Ji-Jun shouted that she was the only one causing confusion. Subin yelled back that he had confused her from the start and should have explained things properly. He demanded to know what kind of explanation a crying girl fresh out of the hospital would even need. Then, angrily, he told her that to him she wasn't even a woman. Subin snapped, asking who did look like a woman to him, and added that he wasn't a real man in her eyes either. She shouted that he was saying she had been the only one drunk. Lifting her hand, she called the waiter and ordered another bottle of soju. Ji-Jun asked if she really wanted to get drunk again. He then asked if she had found the answer she had been looking for. Did she still want to get married? Subin looked at him with frightened eyes, unable to respond. She realized she finally had to make a choice. Ji-Jun stared at her for a long time. He saw she was confused, unable to decide, but he waited patiently for her answer. After much thought, Subin finally said she would marry him. He was shocked she agreed. She then asked about the contract. She muttered that this wasn't even marriage, just an agreement. Still, she told him to drink with her to celebrate. Ji-Jun laughed and admitted he hadn't expected that. Subin poured soju into their glasses but said she didn't want to make a toast. She was already embarrassed enough by what she had done. She told him not to hold back and to drink as much as he wanted. He agreed, suggesting they drink to the last drop. After finishing her glass, Subin grew drowsy and laid her head on the table. Ji-Jun sat there, wondering what to do next. He reminded himself that she had asked him to leave her, so she shouldn't blame him when she sobered up. Just as he was about to leave, the waiter stopped him, asking if that wasn't his girlfriend and how he could just abandon her. Ji-Jun replied that she wasn't his girlfriend. But then he noticed a group of drunk men entering the cafe. Worried for Subin's safety, he quickly recalled his driver's number and called him. He ended up carrying her on his back outside. He cursed under his breath, saying his expensive suit was ruined, and asked why he was even carrying Shin Subin like this. The driver gasped, asking if the girl was really that drunk. Ji-Jun told him to please open the car door. They got in the car and drove off. On the way home, Ji-Jun thought to himself that she had better pay him back once she woke up. At her place, he left the drunken Subin lying on the floor and walked out of the room. Lying there, Subin opened her eyes and thought that if she had known it would turn out like this, she would have become an actress. Then she warned Ji-Jun to be careful, but he just laughed, saying she had some real acting talent. Looking at her in surprise, he asked if this was really what she had wanted to confirm. Did she think he was some creep who would take advantage of a drunk woman? The girl admitted she already knew that, but wondered how she could ever trust him. Deep down, she was trying to test him. The man headed to the bathroom to take a shower, while the girl told herself she was going to figure everything out about him that very night. Sitting angrily on the floor, she clenched her fist and tapped her back, muttering to herself that he was just like a stubborn donkey. She shouted in frustration, asking how he dared to toss people away like discarded corn cobs. She remembered the moment in the cafe when he had told her she probably thought he was some kind of scumbag who would take advantage of a drunk woman. With determination, she decided that even if this was only a fake marriage, she had no interest in living with a criminal. Smiling to herself, she felt more determined than ever. She told herself she would show him if he ever tried to do anything strange. Then she heard the door click. She gasped nervously and quickly lay back down on the floor. Pretending to be asleep, she noticed him stepping out of the bathroom and approaching her, with drops of water falling from his wet hair onto the floor. Ji-Jun stopped near her and saw her lying on her side. He stared at her for a long while Subin wondered why he was looking at her like that. She continued pretending to sleep while Ji-Jun wondered why she had shifted positions. Was she awake after all? Carefully, he lifted her off the floor. At that moment, she felt a drop of water fall from his hair onto her face. As he carried her, she caught the pleasant scent of shampoo lingering in the room, while more drops from his hair landed softly on her skin. She thought to herself how lucky it was that he hadn't realized she was awake. But then she noticed he was carrying her toward the bed and realized this might not be such a good thing. While being carried, she peeked slightly and wondered why he had dragged her on his back earlier, if he could carry her like this now. She noted that he wasn't even drunk. When he reached the bed, he simply tossed her onto it. leaving her with an unpleasant sensation. Subin lay there, feeling discomfort in her lower back. She thought to herself that he must be an idiot. Why couldn't he just lay her down gently? Later, she noticed him walking over to the hanger where his shirt was hanging. He turned on the iron and began pressing it. Subin quietly watched him, finding it oddly satisfying to see the way he took care of himself. After ironing, he began dressing. Droplets of water still trickled down his body. Normally, she didn't have the habit of peeking at people, but tonight felt like an exception. Watching him, she reminded herself that they hated each other, but she couldn't deny he really did take good care of himself. When he finished, he turned back toward her. Approaching the bed, he thought he saw her move slightly. She caught another wave of that shampoo fragrance, but kept pretending to be asleep. Ji-Jun lingered, staring down at her thoughtfully. She started breathing deeply to keep up the act, and he quietly sat on the bed beside her. He leaned closer, trying to make sure she was really asleep, and then began trying to wake her. His hands touched her face in an attempt to rouse her. She thought to herself, wondering where his hands were going, and it seemed to her that he was finally showing his true colors. He told her she should be grateful that he had carried her on his back, because otherwise she would have been in serious trouble. He tapped her forehead with his finger and remarked that although she was an adult, the only thing she was good at was drinking and passing out, and that it really annoyed him. After saying that, he stood up from the bed and, without another word, slowly walked toward the exit. The girl slowly opened her eyes, watching him leave, wondering if he was really going to walk away just like that. A single tear slid down her cheek. Holding her forehead, she suddenly sat up on the bed and cursed him, calling him a jerk for hitting her and saying it actually hurt. Still clutching her forehead, the girl grew furious, realizing that nothing had happened and that her plan had failed. She still couldn't remember what exactly had happened that day, but she recalled that Ji-Jun had also tried to wake her when they returned home. She remembered him sitting beside her when she felt unwell after drinking too much and when she eventually threw up. She recalled him removing all of her dirty clothes and taking them to the bathroom to wash, since they smelled terrible. After piecing everything together, she began smiling. Now she was confident nothing had happened that day, and she had nothing to worry about. Picking up her phone with a smile, she called Ji-Jun. He hadn't expected her call and told her he thought she had still been drunk. He remained surprised that she had actually phoned him, since he had assumed she was fast asleep when he left. Laughing, she asked what he thought about meeting up and suggested they see each other the following week. He was shocked that she wanted to wait until next week and told her the sooner, the better. At first, she suggested meeting her family, then his, but later said they should postpone everything and simply wished him good luck. He was left very surprised, still convinced she had been drunk. After ending the call, she took a deep breath and thought to herself that she needed to strike while the iron was hot. Clutching the phone in her hand, she thought that since everything had already happened, she would use the situation however she pleased. She felt pleased with herself, knowing she had set a plan in motion to trick him, and she was determined to see it through. Outside, night had fallen. Bright lights illuminated the streets as the city wound down after a busy day. Late that evening, Subin's ex-boyfriend, Gunho, returned home. He slammed the door loudly and collapsed on the floor right by the entrance. His mother, seeing him drunk, asked if he planned to keep worrying her, and thought to herself that it was all her fault. Crying, Gunho begged Subin for forgiveness, admitting he had been wrong about everything. His mother was shocked and told him he had lost his mind. He continued crying and told his mother he couldn't take it anymore, pleading with her to bring Subin back to him. His tears dripped onto the floor. He told his mother how much he missed Subin while she screamed at him to stop and demanded to know what the hell he was doing. Gunho wouldn't stop crying, saying he was a terrible guy. His mother tried to calm him down, telling him he couldn't be crying over a girl and that marriage was not a child's game. His mother told him that she had already said many times he should marry a girl like him, someone who would support him. She told him to come to his senses, reminding him that love would never put food on the table. The young man thought that he would do everything his mother asked of him. She had always told him to leave Subin alone since she believed their relationship was only temporary. That's why she forced them to break up. The young man was in despair. He kept crying and said that he truly couldn't go on anymore and thought it would be better for him to die. His mother was shocked by her son's words. She began asking why he was saying such things, adding that she wouldn't be able to live without him. But he kept begging her, telling her that he had been suffering deeply ever since she took Subin away from him, and he wanted her to bring her back. The next day, when Subin arrived at work at the restaurant, she wondered why days like this even existed, because she felt so exhausted. It wasn't an especially unusual day at work, but it was busier than normal. She stood there thinking that she would finally be free once they finished serving the last guest. But then the doors opened and new guests entered the restaurant. Subin politely greeted them and invited them inside. Among the guests, she spotted Park Gunho's mother and froze a little. The older woman looked at her with surprise before asking why she was stuttering. The woman looked at her indignantly and said that although Subin might be an assistant manager, she didn't seem entirely professional. She then smirked arrogantly. She added that it looked as if Subin had walked into the wrong place. But Subin didn't answer her at all. Subin thought that this was the same woman who was supposed to become her mother-in-law, and she hadn't changed one bit in 3 years. Subin asked the woman whether they had a reservation, but the woman replied that she hadn't made one beforehand. Subin apologized and explained that the hall was currently full, so it would be difficult to find them a private room. The woman was furious that there wasn't one available. Subin then suggested they could order food only for takeout, and if they didn't mind, she could escort them. But the woman only glared at her angrily. The woman raised her voice at Subin, demanding how she dared to respond like that. The girl answered calmly that she was simply following the rules, but sincerely apologized if she had offended her. Another woman standing next to Yeonjung, who was Gunho's mother, told her not to get upset and suggested they just go inside. At that moment, a young man approached, apologized, and asked if there was any way he could help. The woman asked if he was the executive director there, and he confirmed that he was. Then she demanded to know what the hell they were teaching their employees. The man explained that Subin hadn't been able to respond properly to the guests, which was why she said it would be hard to find a free room. He then apologized again. The director offered to personally escort the guests, but the woman then asked if she didn't deserve a proper apology directly from Subin. Subin walked up to her and politely apologized, thinking it would be better to quickly apologize in a situation like this. Then she looked at this woman and thought that since she already knew Subin worked there, what kind of service had she been expecting? The woman hated Subin deeply. Subin thought that she and Gunho had broken up a long time ago, so what could have possibly brought her here now? A little later, the director called for Subin. When she came over, he explained that the client insisted only she serve them and asked if she would be okay with that. Subin told him not to worry, that everything would be fine. She thought she needed to finish this unpleasant task quickly. Knocking politely, she opened the door to the room where the guests were waiting. Entering, Subin apologized and announced that she had brought their order. Crab meat soup. Gunho's mother looked at her strangely, then asked how her father was doing. Subin answered that he was much better now. The woman said, "Thank God," and then asked about her mother. The woman suspiciously asked if her mother was still selling tteokbokki near the school. It sounded almost like she was mocking her. Subin didn't reply. The woman pressed further, asking why she wasn't answering. Was it because the question embarrassed her? The girl was about to respond, but then Gunho's mother's friend interrupted and asked if she knew this girl. The woman answered that Subin had chased after Gunho for a while. The woman added that she never understood how a girl carrying trays in a restaurant could have even known about Jeju Island. Outraged, she declared that such a girl had no right to bother her son and looked sternly at Subin. Subin lowered her head slightly, then told them to enjoy their meal and left the room. As she stepped out, she heard the woman remark that she had worked hard, and Subin thanked her. After dinner, when the guests were about to leave, the director asked if they had been satisfied with the service. Yeonjung answered that she supposed they had. Then the woman turned back, looked at Subin, said she had almost forgotten, and handed her a tip. She told Subin that she must have been tired after standing all day and that her legs probably hurt, so she should take a taxi. The woman then asked if perhaps Subin didn't want to accept tips from a guest like her. Subin stayed silent. The woman continued, saying that even if the girl felt she didn't deserve it, she actually did, and should accept it. Later, Subin asked the director if he could make sure she wouldn't have to serve them again, but he replied that the woman had only been trying to get under her skin and she shouldn't let guests like that hurt her self-esteem. Subin assured him that she was fine and told him not to worry. She believed that serving a woman like that only made her self-esteem stronger. Otherwise, she would have been crushed a long time ago. After a hard day's work, Subin was finally ready to go home. She walked through the restaurant's large, beautiful lobby. She was certain she wouldn't run into anyone else that day. But in the lobby sat Yeonjung, sipping coffee. The woman called her over and gave her a sharp look. She asked if Subin could spare a few minutes. Subin agreed to sit with her at the table and then asked what had brought Gunho's mother there, surprised that she had been waiting specifically for her. Subin listened carefully, and the first thing the woman asked was how long she planned to keep working there. The woman asked why the girl still didn't understand what she was trying to say. Subin told her to be more straightforward and asked her directly why she was there. The woman replied that now she could see what kind of person Subin was, and remarked that it must have been difficult for her to manage her image in front of people. Subin got up from her seat, thinking she would leave if the woman had nothing more to say. Yeonjung slammed her hand on the table and told her to sit down. Then she yelled that how dare Subin try to leave while someone older was speaking to her. She shouted after her that this was how her parents had taught her and that she hadn't finished speaking yet. Subin only smiled. Yeonjung scolded Subin about how Gunho had a job and asked if she didn't realize that carrying plates like that was a bad idea. She reminded her that this was a popular hotel and that it wasn't necessary for her to work on the front lines. The woman suggested that Subin quit and start working in the office instead of the restaurant. Subin was very surprised by this suggestion. She asked why she should do that, and Yeonjung simply replied, "Why not?" Yeonjung explained that her son was a doctor, so how could she see her daughter-in-law serving food in a restaurant? She said that he was so soft-hearted that he couldn't turn away from her, and that was why she was speaking to Subin like this. Finally, Subin realized why Yeonjung had come to her. She understood that the woman loved her son so much that she couldn't refuse him anything. Subin thought it was because Gunho still complained that he couldn't forget her. Then she recalled all the memories of how he had clung to her when they were dating. She thought that people didn't change that easily. She remembered Gunho proposing marriage to her and how shocked she had been by it. At that time, it had seemed like they were happy together, so they had promised to marry. When she first met Gunho's mother, she had called her mom, which didn't sit well with Yeonjung. Yeonjung told Subin that she was not her mother and asked if she was really planning to marry Gunho. The woman said she was afraid someone might hear her and warned Subin not to call her that again. These had been the first words she heard upon entering their home. Subin thought that the moment her son had disappeared from view, Yeonjung had changed completely. After the unfortunate accident with Subin's father, she had asked her to break up with Gunho as if she had been waiting for it. All of this got on her nerves, and Subin thought that Yeonjung really was still a bad person. Then the woman started shouting that Subin had laughed at someone older than her and that she now seemed ridiculous in front of her. Subin responded that she hadn't seen her in 3 years and that her unexpected remark seemed a little sarcastic. She adjusted her hair and asked what would happen if she didn't change jobs. Then she angrily asked Yeonjung who she was to tell her what to do and what not to do. Yeonjung yelled at her for calling her madam, but Subin explained that she didn't know whether to call her the client or the mother of her client. The woman became even angrier, screaming that Subin had gone crazy. Yeonjung shouted that Subin hadn't even said anything in the restaurant, and how dare she speak like that? Subin calmly replied that that was exactly what she had done. Subin pointed out that even 7-year-olds knew it wasn't right to cause a scene, cry and shout in a restaurant to get what they wanted, calling it childish behavior. The woman was outraged by this. Subin picked up her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and proudly said that she hoped they would never meet again in the future. Then she turned to Yeonjung and said that she should be ashamed of her behavior as an adult. She added that it was shameful that Yeonjung didn't realize she had made a spectacle of herself. The woman yelled that Subin thought she was wrong. Subin warned her that if she came back again, she would call the police and that she should remember that. Yeonjung screamed that she shouldn't think her son would stay with her after the way she had treated his mother. She shouted, asking if Subin wanted to hurt her again. Subin paused for a moment, then replied that she needed to be careful with her words. In her thoughts, Subin silently thanked her ex's mother for deciding to live alone for the rest of her life. She asked Yeonjung if she didn't think she should reflect on her words if she wanted to live a long and happy life with her son. Yeonjung was furious to hear such words from Subin. Then Subin's phone rang. She picked up and called the caller, "Honey." It was Ji Ye-jun. He was surprised and asked if her ex had come back. Subin explained that this time it was her ex's mother. He asked where she was, and she replied that she was at the hotel lounge cafe. He said he would come over soon and asked if he could come in, but Subin told him to wait outside and that she would be out in a minute. Subin thought about how she would be getting married soon and that if it weren't for her ex's mother, she would never have met her fiancé. Yeonjung looked at her, clenching her lips in anger. Subin slightly nodded, smiled, and said that she truly appreciated her help. As she tried to leave, her ex's mother still tried to stop her and asked why she was doing this. Subin then took the money the woman had left as a tip, returned it, and told her she didn't need it. She said she didn't want to discuss anything further and left. Yeonjung stood holding the money, angrily shouting at how Subin dared to do that. She warned Subin not to think she would stay calm after all the insults, telling her she had made a big mistake. The woman ran outside quickly, warning Subin that she wouldn't let it go if she acted that way. Slamming the door loudly and chasing after her, she shouted that Subin would never meet a good man. When Subin ran outside, she saw a handsome young man greet her and hug her. The young man and Subin stood hugging, looking very much in love, which infuriated Yeonjung even more. The young man glanced at Yeonjung, smiled slightly, and tilted his head as if greeting her. The woman stood frozen, staring at them in shock. Ji Ye-jun behaved very kindly toward Subin. The young man opened the car door for her politely, and Subin got in. The furious woman stood by the cafe entrance, silently watching them drive away. Subin felt very satisfied that Ji Jun had arrived at the perfect moment in front of Miss Moon. Looking at the man, Subin thought that she hadn't wanted to force herself to perform in front of Yeonjung, and that what she had done was more than enough. She thought that Yeonjung was the type of person easily influenced by appearances. Subin felt uneasy, worried that Yeonjung might form opinions about her relationship with Ji Jun. Goosebumps ran across her skin as she realized how close she had come to stepping into a house ruled by such a mother-in-law. For a brief moment, she even thought that marrying Ji Jun might turn out 100 times better than she had imagined. Subin started laughing, which surprised Ji Jun. He wondered why she was laughing, asking if she had lost her mind. She reassured him that everything was fine, that she just found it funny. She asked him, out of curiosity, if he had felt the same way when he had defeated the student council presidential candidate. He was surprised by her sudden question. Subin explained that she had asked simply because she believed that forgiveness was a virtue and that young people should respect adults. She thought that if she could be as polite as possible, she might avoid ending up like that other person. She had always wondered why he acted so stubbornly and irrationally. Subin asked if he remembered what he had said to her back then, but he had no idea what she was referring to. Subin was irritated by his words. She said that he mentioned that losing could also be a win, that forgiveness was a virtue, things said to children. He admitted that he lived a life where, if he was hit, he hit back twice until her opponent was defeated. Subin clarified that she couldn't hit twice, but she believed that receiving hits wasn't a virtue either. Ji Jun was taken aback by her remark and replied that if she had listened to him properly, she could even receive rice cakes in her sleep. Subin felt satisfied with the conversation, smiled, and commented on how interesting it was that they had reached such conclusions. She concluded that agreeing to marry him wasn't such a bad idea after all. Ji Jun smiled, then looked out the car window, noting that the weather had changed and that it would probably snow tomorrow. When they arrived at the meeting place, Subin wondered why she felt so nervous, even though he was the one meeting her parents. Before meeting Ji Jun, she had warned her mother that she had someone she intended to marry and that he would soon come to greet them. Her mother scolded her, calling her a shameless girl, thinking Subin was in trouble. Subin tried to explain that things weren't as her mother assumed. Only a few days earlier, Subin had promised to remain single, so she felt she deserved her mother's reaction. She hadn't even had the chance to tell her mother that her fiancé was Ji Jun. When they reached the door, they rang the bell. Subin later asked what his parents had said when he told them about the visit. Ji Jun replied that nothing in particular had happened. She asked what his parents liked and what she should bring. He explained that it was fine since his mother and younger siblings were on vacation. Ji Jun added that they would meet his father tomorrow. Subin thought that going on vacation when asked to attend a meeting seemed impolite. Climbing the stairs, she realized it didn't matter. They would see each other at the family dinner anyway. She also noted that Ji Jun had not mentioned that his father was the only one in the family who knew the marriage was fake. Upon reaching the door, her parents opened it and were very surprised to see who had come with their daughter. Her mother, astonished, asked if it really was Ji Jun. Subin confirmed that it was. Her parents were very pleased and invited them inside. Ji Jun asked for forgiveness, and they entered the apartment together. Sitting down for the family dinner, tensions arose as they tried to resolve issues with the debt. But after Ji Jun stated that he was taking their precious daughter and therefore forgiving the debt, the negotiations ended completely in his favor, leaving her parents defeated. After dinner, as they stepped outside, Subin's mother wished Ji Jun a safe journey and called him her son, but her father objected, saying she shouldn't call him that. Later, her father said that from now on, she should call him her son-in-law. Subin felt a flutter of fear at his words, thinking his portrayal of the perfect son-in-law was almost unreal. Ji Jun remembered he had bought something on the way, took a bouquet of flowers from the car, and gave them to Subin's mother. Her mother was delighted by the gift, commenting on how beautiful it was and asking if any woman could resist flowers. Ji Jun was pleased that she liked them. Subin wondered if her parents were too fond of her. Ji Jun said it was time to leave. Her parents agreed and wished him a good trip. He hugged Subin, smiled, and said it was time to go. She wanted to ask him something else but didn't dare. Her parents were very pleased with their son-in-law, waved goodbye, and wished him a safe journey, reminding him to be careful. Standing there, Subin thought the evening had ended perfectly. Her parents were equally impressed. Her father said that Ji Jun had grown into a charming and wonderful young man, while her mother wondered where his attractiveness came from, noting that even if his parents never ate, they would still be plump. After meeting her parents, Subin also became curious about Ji Jun's household habits. She appeared slightly tense, knowing it was time to greet the man's family. Seeing his house, she was surprised at its enormous size and felt small within it. Entering the grand living room, Subin became nervous. A maid approached them and said that the master was waiting in the dining room. In the dining room, Ji Yejun's father politely welcomed them. Subin introduced herself, and his father responded that it was a pleasure to meet her. She made a very pleasant impression on him, and he wished them all the best in their family life. Subin had been worried that Miss Moon's previous behavior might mean this person would treat her poorly, but there was no such problem. After the required greetings, the conversation didn't progress further. Subin noticed that the men seemed uncomfortable around each other. It looked as if they weren't interested in each other's affairs. Subin decided she would just eat her meal. Later, she handed a gift to Ji Yejun's father, explaining that it was small but prepared by her parents. He thanked her. It was time to leave. Subin realized there hadn't been anything particularly awkward, though the tense atmosphere had been palpable. Walking down the road, Subin looked at Ji Yejun and wondered if the atmosphere in his house had always been like this. He remained silent, and his aura became colder and more distant, which struck her as slightly odd. She walked quietly beside him, thinking that he had probably always lived in such an environment. After meeting his father, they went to visit his grandmother in the hospital. Entering her room, Subin asked how she was feeling. The grandmother was delighted to see her and said that having her there made her feel much better. Subin mentioned that her parents had been worried and sent some snacks for her. The grandmother expressed her happiness and asked Subin to convey her gratitude to her parents. Subin wished her grandmother a speedy recovery, and the grandmother responded that she was already doing that. The grandmother touched Subin's face and wished for the two of them to marry soon and have beautiful children, asking her to stay by her grandson's side for the rest of her life. The girl noticed that the grandmother had grown weaker. Still, the grandmother continued, saying it didn't matter what the children would look like. They would be wonderful no matter what. Subin just smiled in response. Then the grandmother hugged her tightly and said they would see each other again later. Ji Yejun watched them, thinking it would be hard to handle this, yet she remained just as she had always been. Finally, the awaited day arrived. It was a perfect day, incredibly sunny and magical, with a bright blue sky and birds singing enchanting songs. The long-awaited meeting of both families took place. Subin's parents expressed how happy they were to meet Ji Yejun's family, and his parents replied that the feeling was mutual. Subin's parents asked if it would be okay to skip formalities and hoped it wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. Ji Yejun's parents assured them it was fine and said they had prepared something. Subin's parents believed that the union of two people in love should be sentimental. Ji Yejun's father said he just wanted to do something for the couple, even if it was a small gesture. The girls' parents agreed. Ji Yejun's younger siblings sat quietly, probably uninterested in the wedding. His sister glanced at Subin in a way that made her think that first impressions might not go perfectly. After the introductions, the parents wished each other well. Ji Yejun's father said their daughter was lovely and thanked them for allowing her to become part of their family. Subin's parents expressed their gratitude for the warm welcome. Ji Yejun's father shook hands with Subin's father, saying it was a great honor to welcome her into their family. The long-awaited wedding day arrived. There was a lot of hustle and bustle, and once Subin put on her veil, she was ready. Subin's mother, seeing her daughter in a white wedding dress, couldn't hold back tears of happiness. Subin was surprised by her mother's tears, but her mother insisted it was fine. Subin smiled and teased her mother not to be so dramatic, joking that she might cancel the engagement because of it. Her father, seeing her, was speechless, saying she looked incredibly beautiful. Subin indeed looked stunning. She gazed at herself in the mirror and thought that she had waited for this moment her entire life. She imagined the moment the curtain would rise and reveal her in the pure white dress. She would stand before her groom, who would fall in love with her all over again, perhaps a bit overly dramatic in his reaction. This was the image she had pictured. But at that moment, everything reminded her that this was only a fake marriage with selfish motives. Still, she thought it was fine. Her mother was there, and that was enough. Upon arriving at the venue, the groom was invited to enter first. The bride and her father waited by the door, while the ceremony host announced that the bride's entrance would be soon. Her father held her hand, trembling from excitement, but Subin reassured him with a smile, telling him to relax. He admitted that he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle without a single mistake, practicing for days so he wouldn't limp. Finally, the bride entered the grand hall with her father. As the wedding music played, her father told her to be happy, and tears formed in her eyes. She thought to herself that everyone there had chosen to be happy, yet for some reason she felt guilty. Giving his daughter into the groom's hands, her father told him to take care of her. But Ji Yejun, looking at them, didn't respond, simply at a loss for words while gazing at his bride. When he took Subin's hand, he noticed tears slowly streaming down her face. They first asked the groom if he agreed to take Subin as his lawful wife, promising to care for, cherish, and love her through joy and sorrow for the rest of his life. He agreed. Then it was the bride's turn. She was asked if she agreed to take Ji-Jun as her lawful husband and to care for, cherish, and love him through joy and sorrow for the rest of her life. She agreed. After such vows, an incredibly beautiful song played for them at the altar. Subin thought that, like modern brides, she would also love to dance. She inhaled deeply, thinking she could ask a friend to sing a wedding song for her. Ji-Jun noticed her tears and asked why she was crying. She denied it, insisting she was fine. The groom gently wiped her tears with his hand, smiled, and told her not to cry. He added that when she cried, it looked worse in photos, so he asked her to smile. At first, his words annoyed her, but then she smiled and thought how strange guys could be. Their wedding ceremony concluded successfully. The bride and groom looked absolutely perfect. After the ceremony, the newlyweds prepared for their honeymoon. Sitting on the plane, Subin reminded Ji-Jun to keep his promise. She asked him about his vow that he would be the best son-in-law while they were married. Ji-Jun reassured her that he had kept his promise. As they spoke, the plane was preparing for takeoff. Subin seemed frozen in her seat, and the man told her that no one would be unhappy in their marriage. On the plane, Subin appeared tense. He asked what was wrong, noting she looked like she had never flown before. She laughed and admitted it was her first time. Once the plane took off, she thought she should have flown earlier if she had the chance. At first, she was slightly scared, but looking out the window, she was amazed by what she saw. She stared in awe, mouth open, captivated by the incredible night view. Subin looked at Ji-Jun, and he handed her a can of drink, suggesting that she just drink it quietly without making a fuss. She gladly agreed to drink it with him, feeling very tired and in need of calming down a little. She thought to herself that this was an unplanned honeymoon, but it was still a trip. As they flew, Subin felt incredibly happy because nothing like this had ever happened to her before. She couldn't wait for the plane to land. The flight took a long time, and Subin grew tired and began to drift off to sleep. She slowly rested her head on the man's shoulder and fell asleep. Ji-Jun didn't like it at all and felt very irritated. He lightly nudged her with his hand, and she leaned to the other side. He thought to himself how heavy she was. He looked at her and then touched her shoulder, trying to wake her, but she was fast asleep. The plane continued its journey. Finally, morning came. Subin woke up and, stepping off the plane, saw breathtaking scenery. Palm trees, a blue sky, and the bright, blazing sun. Subin was overjoyed and nearly breathless at the sight, as this was her first vacation of this kind. In front of her was the stunning Waikiki beach, scorching sun, white sand, and unbelievably blue water. She stood at a luxurious hotel, feeling incredibly happy to be on her honeymoon in Hawaii. Ji-Jun approached with 2 keys to different rooms, telling her to enjoy herself for all 5 days. They went to their respective rooms, agreeing not to run into each other for the next 5 days. Subin entered her room and initially felt a bit annoyed. Her cheeks flushed, and she seemed somewhat flustered. She then looked around the room and was blown away by the incredible view from the window. She was absolutely thrilled. Standing on the large, luxurious balcony, she still couldn't believe she was in Hawaii. She flopped onto the huge, lavish bed, enjoying the simple pleasure of lying down without doing anything. Stretching, she thought that finally, she could start truly living. This kind of vacation had always been her dream. Lying on the large bed, she marveled at how wonderful it was to relax. She began planning the rest of her trip, wanting to try surfing and eat delicious food immediately. Thinking everything was perfect, she made herself comfortable on a soft pillow and fell asleep. While she slept soundly, her phone, lying nearby on the bed, rang abruptly, waking her up. Seeing the caller ID, Subin realized it was Miss Chang and thought she didn't want her mother to see her alone. She answered and greeted her mother. Miss Chang asked if they had arrived safely. Subin replied that the flight had been wonderful and couldn't have been better. The girl's mother was about to ask about Ji-Jun, but Subin quickly said he was taking a shower. Miss Chang worried that she had called too early and that they hadn't eaten yet. Her mother asked what they planned for dinner and requested a few photos. Subin replied that a good restaurant was nearby and they would go later. She would call via video. Her mother said she was looking forward to it. Miss Chang wished her to have a great time. Subin agreed, but then thought she should have told her to just send photos. Subin paused, wondering what to do next, when her phone rang again unexpectedly. Seeing the caller, she realized it was her mother-in-law. She answered, expressing how glad she was to hear from her. Her mother-in-law asked if the flight went well. Subin politely reassured her that everything was fine and that they had been about to call her. Then her mother-in-law asked if she could bring a bag back for her. Subin promised she would. Her mother-in-law said she had wanted to ask Ji-Jun, but he hadn't answered. Subin explained that he was in the shower, which was why he didn't respond. Her mother-in-law said she didn't want to bother her without reason, and Subin assured her it was fine. Her mother-in-law reminded her that he was now married, but in any case, she hoped they would enjoy themselves and not forget to send photos to the grandmother, or better yet, call via video. Subin agreed. Subin felt disappointed, realizing she wasn't as free as she had thought. Tired, she stepped into the corridor and Ji Ye-jun appeared too. He commented that the situation was terrible, and she agreed. He suggested they have dinner together, but only tonight. Subin thought it was a good idea. Arriving at the restaurant and ordering food, they sat down. Ji Ye-jun hugged her, took out his phone, and they started a video call. Subin asked him to wait a moment and smiled. She took a photo with the phone. Seeing the photo, she screamed because her eyes were closed, but Ji Ye-jun said it was fine. The important thing was that he looked good. Then he joked that it was their honeymoon, so she should take care of him. Subin shouted for him to go away. Then Ji Ye-jun's phone rang, and Subin asked if it was his grandmother. It was actually Subin's parents calling. Her mother greeted her son-in-law, and they were delighted to see them. Ji Ye-jun spoke politely, smiling cheerfully. Subin, sitting nearby, was annoyed and made faces at him. He mentioned that they had come for dinner and asked if they had eaten. Her mother said yes and asked if the time difference made things unusual. Ji Ye-jun assured her it was fine and that next time they would eat together. Her mother was pleased and thanked him, then teased why her daughter couldn't speak as nicely, making Ji Ye-jun slightly embarrassed. She then called her husband over, who was standing nearby, to see their daughter and son-in-law. Ji Ye-jun smiled, and Subin silently watched him. After talking with her parents, the man called his grandparents. He suggested they might already be asleep, so perhaps they could call later. Subin agreed. He told her to continue eating as he prepared to leave. Subin asked where he was going, surprised. Ji Ye-jun left, saying he wanted to eat comfortably. Subin thought this was a thoughtful gesture. Left to have dinner alone, Subin thought that it was probably not carelessness. Most likely, Ji Ye-jun just felt uncomfortable. After that, Ji Ye-jun returned to his room, where he felt very comfortable because he enjoyed being alone. Sitting alone on the large terrace, admiring the views, he thought to himself that he was much more at ease now. The next morning, Subin and Ji Ye-jun went down to the dining hall for breakfast, where many delicious dishes were laid out. Subin approached the table where Ji Ye-jun was sitting and suggested they eat together. He questioned why she was sitting next to him and why she didn't just go sit elsewhere. He pointed to a nearby table and remarked that there were plenty of free seats behind him, so why not disappear there and not spoil his appetite? Subin thought, why not, but wondered what was wrong with him. She reflected that she seemed so important that she might be making Ji Ye-jun's perfect world miserable. She thought, oh my, I just didn't know, and started laughing loudly. Ji Ye-jun got very angry and told her to leave him alone. Subin picked up her phone, noting that they hadn't greeted her grandparents yet, who were probably waiting for their call, and she called them. She greeted her grandparents and asked if they could see them well. She told them they had come down for breakfast. Her grandparents were delighted to see them. Her grandmother was thrilled by the beautiful flowers and asked if they had gone for a walk. Subin confirmed that they had. Noticing Ji Ye-jun's plate, the grandmother asked why he had only some greens, joking that he probably thought that would be enough energy for the night. Subin laughed, and Ji Ye-jun blushed a little. Subin reassured her grandmother, saying she had plenty of meat to share with Ji Ye-jun. The grandmother praised Subin. The girl mentioned that she hoped her grandmother's treatment was going well and promised to visit as soon as she returned home, politely saying goodbye. Glancing at Ye-jun, she was pleased with the conversation, but then got very angry when she saw him take a piece of egg roll from her plate. As he put it in his mouth, he reminded her that she had said she wanted to share, and Subin shouted that she certainly hadn't planned on doing that. Subin got up from the table, holding her plate, and told him that if he wanted something, he could just get it himself. She remarked that he had legs after all and carried her plate to a neighboring table. Ji Ye-jun looked at her with a smile and commented that she had acted beautifully in front of his grandparents. In his mind, he thanked her for the well-done performance, but he couldn't understand where the person who had said they'd rather die than do this had gone. He thought there was something more to her. Looking at her, he realized she captivated him every time he looked. Watching her eat quickly, he thought she must be really hungry and wondered if she might get indigestion. Subin did indeed look pale, realizing she probably had indigestion from eating too fast. Looking at Ji Ye-jun, she thought she wasn't used to eating alone, but he seemed better when he was by himself. It didn't matter, she thought as she went outside, determined to have fun on her own. Looking around, the girl noticed that everyone around her seemed to be in couples. Walking down the street, she couldn't believe that her first seaside trip was with Ji Ye-jun. To lift her spirits, she strolled along the beach, taking selfies and beautiful photos, which made her very happy. She didn't think her family was waiting for this, but she took a selfie just in case, thinking she would show the photos to her parents when she returned. Then came the most important and long-awaited moment. She called and booked a dinner spot on a cruise for that evening. She was overjoyed as this had long been a dream on her wish list. Smiling with delight, everything felt like a dream, as she could hardly believe it was really happening to her. She thought it was very fun, and following her guide's advice, she planned to go snorkeling the next day. Looking at the beauty around her, she thought her parents would really enjoy it if they came here too. She felt a little sad realizing she was the only one enjoying all this beauty. On her way back to the hotel, the girl stopped by a shop, thinking about what to drink and how to entertain herself alone. She looked very satisfied and happy to be on the cruise, and Ji Yejun noticed her in the shop as well. He asked if she was alone on the cruise, and she replied, thinking that they had seen each other at breakfast, but it felt like she hadn't seen him in a long time. She told him it was difficult being surrounded by all those couples. He agreed and questioned why she even went to such places. She asked him why she was in Hawaii if she couldn't go wherever she wanted. Then he asked if she planned to go out alone the next day. She said of course, wondering why not. Ji Yejun asked where she would go next, and she said to Bae, but then thought about why she was answering him so obediently. Exiting the shop, she waved and said she was leaving. Ji Yejun looked at her strangely and said nothing. Opening a can of drink and taking a sip, the girl thought it was amazing. The perfect way to end the day. She wished she could live here for at least a month, but at 20, she felt she couldn't dream of such a life. The next morning, she woke up thinking how wonderful everything was, with another incredible day full of adventures ahead. Walking by the sea, Subin asked strangers to take pictures of her with the ocean as the background. The photos turned out amazing. Then someone offered to take another photo, and she agreed. A minute later, the wind blew her hat off. She looked around and saw her hat being carried toward the sea, panicking, until she noticed a hand trying to grab it. To her surprise, Ji Yejun was there, struggling to catch her hat. She asked in astonishment why he was there, but he silently held the hat, looking at her. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this story and what manhwa you'd like to see next. See you in the next installment.